The beautiful font stroke neatly, not the slightest mess, can be seen in her desperate and determined state of mind. I cannot imagine that this Xiao Shimo has such deep feelings for Wen Chuan. Wen Chuan named the child Jifan, urged not to covet the throne, must be to see through the wealth and power, only want the child ordinary peace and happiness. This Xiao Shimo understand, can be counted as his confidant. I am pleased. Xiao Shimo accompanied Wen Chuan through the last moments of his life, for him to give birth to a child, and with him, I think, I am also grateful to this woman. I asked Xiao Shi, has the news been sent to the palace? He cried and nodded, it has been delivered. I sighed and was about to speak when I heard the death knell ring out, striking steeply at the hearts of all. I slowly raised my head, looked at Rui Rong, and said decisively, Rui Rong, I'm afraid everything is final. Afterwards, several of us all got up and knelt down in the direction of the Forbidden City. Deshan 28 May 23 at dawn, Deshan Emperor died at the age of 53, posthumous name Gonghe Guang Pro Chunhui Deshan Emperor. State mourning for 3 months, fasting, stopped the rituals and marriages. On the following day, the fifth son of the emperor, Wen Lang, ascended to the throne, changed the name of the year to Hong Yuan, and granted amnesty to the whole world. The imperial Guifei was honored as Empress Dowager Shaoran, and the fourth son of the emperor, Wenhui, was named King Hengyan. Former Crown Prince Wen Chuan was posthumously named King of Jingcheng, and his son Jifan was named King of Zhaoqing County. Former Crown Prince's side consort, Xiao Shimo, the Princess of Weining County, followed her martyrdom, and was posthumously named Prince Consort of Xiaoxi and Consort of King of Jingcheng. When Lang ascended the throne after the first thing is to carefully interrogate the two in the capital of the cult hostages, but nothing, are answered the antidote is not false, the rest do not know, cannot, beheading, and then sent troops to eliminate that has been harming a party for many years of the white tin religion. I know that there must be a conspiracy, but the new emperor ascended to the throne, a time when the situation is not yet stable, when Lang has not been able to leave the palace to come over this side, the thorough investigation of the matter will have to be put on hold. More than a month has passed, and the capital's previous bout of boiling gradually calmed down. When Lang has not been out of the palace, although occasionally sent over to send letters or messages, but only words. I can understand, an emperor in the first throne busy unimaginable, especially when Lang this kind of unprepared emperor. However, Ruirong day by day silence, I also see in the eyes, in addition to reluctantly accompany her to say a few words, the other I cannot help, after all, I too, one is a heartbroken, one is a sad person. On this day, I accompanied my mother to go to incense, and on the carriage back, I looked at my mother with a preoccupied look of wanting to say something, and smiled bitterly, does mother have something to say to you or? You child the emperor ascended to the throne also has a month, although in national mourning, but the harem is not yet a consort and a half concubines is not reasonable, mother heard your father say, the Empress Dowager intends to as soon as possible for the emperor to choose some official daughters into the palace accompanied by the driver, this time is different from the selection of the show, because of the special time, so deliberately to the age of 16 as a limit, in order to choose some mature and stable, to be the late emperor's big funeral after the will and the list will be passed down. I heard and not surprised, according to the old routine when the new emperor ascended to the throne, if it has become an adult and there is no concubine, half a month on the election of at least 30 women into the palace, known as the selection, which is generally a large-scale selection, even more than the number of people to be selected each year. But for the selection of women in the selection of the requirements of the more stringent selection, in addition to the family background, but also often have the age of the limitations. The Empress Dowager delayed until now to hold the selection, must also be the change of the old and new is very sudden due to. I did not know what mother intended, selection was not unusual, and as I was not yet 16 years of age, I was not among those to be chosen on this occasion. Mother looked at me and said, you child this time is not good, but also gave us a wake up, you child you. Heart to have a measure, if you do not want to go to the palace, father and mother will also pay attention to the door for you to the right person, rush to next year's election before the emperor to give marriage. Your mind, father and mother are aware of, just now. Alas, the creation of a man, mother saw me did not make a sound, then said, that the Hanlon Academy of a university professor and your father quite familiar, he has a disciple, young talent, the literary grace is very good, this year's autumn examination will be able to win. The autumn test this year will be able to win, character and family with our family is also worthy of. I lowered my head, the suppressed sorrow in my heart gradually surged up again, and forced myself to hold it back, and after some moments of silence, I said to my mother, this matter will be discussed at a later time. Mother didn't force me, just nodded and looked at me painfully. Mother, can you sit in the other courtyard in a while? Seeing mother's inquiring eyes, I smiled comfortingly at her. Mother doesn't need to heart about me, you will think clearly. Mother, go over and take a look at Roy Rong, she's facing a change of heart and her family isn't with her, so I have a heart but not a mind. You thought about it, it's best for mother to step in, it's also considered helping the emperor share his worries. Mother knows Ruirong's identity, since she nodded her head to agree, Ruirong that child is also a bitter fate, the only person who can rely on became the 9-to-5, the family was convicted and left her without a family, even if the emperor made an exception and called her into the palace can only start as a palace maid or a dressing gown. Alas, with that child's nature, and how to survive in the harem. When I mentioned this, my mother and I were both saddened. On this day, my mother said a lot to Ruirong, some analyzed and consoled her, more, she told her of the helplessness of being a woman, the forbearance and sacrifices she must make, especially when you decide to be a daughter-in-law of the royal family. In the end, when I saw my mother lovingly stop Ruirong into her arms, accompanied by her tears, I was truly feeling the happiness and beauty of the company of loved ones. If it were not for the fact that Ruirong is still waiting for news of Wen Lang, I would really like to move back home immediately. 3 days later is the late emperor and Wen Chuan's funeral. Kneeling at the door looking at the vast state funeral procession, cannot help but once again back to the liver, until the procession disappeared at the end of the street. I was ringing bells hard to pull back, and then cried for a while, only gradually stopped. The next afternoon, Xiaoxi suddenly came over here, said that the emperor today after the sacrifice to go to the prince's residence, is now the Jing Qing Wang house to visit the little county king, please Ruirong, and I went ahead to wait. Ruirong is a pleasant surprise. I am afraid that this is when Lang deliberately arranged the move out of the palace, there must be important things to discuss, so and Ruirong busy cleaning up, along with Xiaoxi into the king of Jingqing house, waiting in the main hall of the west side of the hall. I looked at every blade of grass, every tree, every house, every tile was quite sentimental, and forced myself to suppress it. Good thing there is not much time for me to be sad, soon the outside will be noisy. Listening to the sound of kowtowing one after another, closer and closer into the main hall, I too cannot help but also nervous. The last time we parted are 5 princes, this time has been the emperor, although early on will be psychologically prepared, can be in front of the eyes or cannot help but be apprehensive. Soon came Wen Lang's voice, was summoning Qiao Jingyun and the little county king, said some consolation encouragement and so on the scene. That self-proclaimed, voice sounds a little tired, he is bearing the burden of the kingdom that he has never thought of. I turned my head to look at Ruirong, her face also appeared concerned. The summoning of the main hall soon ended in the baby's crying, with a sound of footsteps, the main hall was quiet. A few moments, 2 inner eunuchs pushed open the door of the west side of the hall, Chang Yuan first step in, around to check a bit, with the previous 2 people together respectfully stand at one side. At this time I was still imagining that Jifan's appearance, I do not know how much like Wen Chuan, and Ruirong is still thinking about things, we are not aware of the preparation to meet the driver should be the etiquette. Chapter 12, The New Emperor, 3, It was not until a flash of bright yellow in front of my eyes that I suddenly woke up, and I hurriedly bowed my head and knelt. My daughter sees your majesty, long live the emperor. Kneeling in a hurry, the knees hit straight pain, Ruirong also followed in my side kneeling, but did not make a sound. I secretly look at her, found that she actually has been in tears, know that although it has long been known, but when Wen Lang this new identity all of a sudden appeared in front of her eyes, ultimately it is difficult to accept. Wen Lang did not make a sound. When a few internal eunuchs exited the side hall and brought the door, only then did he pull up Rui Rong at once, and helped me. At this time, Wen Lang looks no longer casual indulgence, replaced by three tired, a touch of helplessness, if not that eye-piercing dragon robe, or not yet have an emperor should have the majesty. Watching them look at each other, but silent, I think I can understand their feelings. 1,000 words cannot be spoken, that is how it is. I hesitated slightly, but still said, the emperor must not be able to delay for too long, if there are things that need to be discussed or as soon as possible to discuss the good. Wen Lang was shocked to hear this, and even suddenly swept Rui Rong into his arms, but he didn't want Rui Rong to break away, stepped back, and softly said, Your Majesty, please sit down. These words obviously stung Wen Lang. A look of surprise appeared on his face. Rui Rong, you. Wen Lang seemed to realize something and turned his head to look at me again. I was stunned and blurted out, Your Majesty. He showed an extremely disappointed expression. Even you have grown apart from me. I don't know if it's my own illusion, but his look at this moment has a few moments of Wenchuan's appearance, making me lose my concentration for a moment. Looked at him for a while, I turned back to Rui Rong. Pulled Wen Lang said, Rui Rong, we did not say it, all this has become a fact, always have to face. When there is no one else around, the emperor is still the original brother Lang. I think this time out of the palace to come is specially for the purpose of seeing you one side. He did not in front of us constrained frame, how can we be divided to hurt his heart? I paused and watched their faces soften. Sit down first, we haven't seen each other in January, we must have a lot to talk about. Three people sat down together. Rui Rong first opened his mouth, although still cautious. The language has been concerned, that political affairs must be very busy, the emperor to take care of your body. Don't call me emperor. Wen Lang was still slightly chastising. Rui Rong, you've lost weight. Rui Rong but no longer speak. I see that this situation still want me to say, so fight the spirit, the so-called thoughts cause people to thin. Rui Rong, this is the result of thinking about the king day by day. Brother Lang should rejoice is, how still blame people. Wen Lang brought a little smile to this and reached out to shake Rui Rong's hand. I intend to receive Rui Rong into the palace. A word that caused Rui Rong to suddenly panic and draw back her hand to look at me. I was not surprised, but only asked, Rui Rong is not suitable for this selection in terms of both status and age, has Brother Lang reported to the Empress Dowager. Wen Lang had a few moments of anxiety. Not yet, it is because of this damn rules. I think I always need to plan an identity for Rui Rong, and then go to report to Mother, otherwise Mother will also be difficult. These days, she is quite hard. Wen Lang's words reminded me of the last time I met with the Empress Dowager in this mansion as well, that sad mother, so I nodded. Is Brother Lang planning to make up an identity for Rui Rong? Seeing Wen Lang's acquiescence, I added, the firstborn daughters of the families of officials above the 5th rank will be recorded by the court as soon as they are born, and there are only two ways for Rui Rong to imitate her identity. One is to be reported as a concubine, and the other is to take over the identity of someone else's firstborn. But this former, if the annual draft in the selection time is very difficult to be selected. Even if Brother Lang forced into the palace, the status is also very low, inevitably crowded, but also very difficult to rise to a high position. As for the latter, in this sensitive time now, the risk is very great. Once it is demolished, even the Empress Dowager Su cannot be guaranteed. We must look for has not been in the royal occasions show up, the age and appearance are similar, and the family is absolutely reliable official daughter. Brother Lang can have a suitable candidate. The words spoken by Wen Lang became more and more gloomy. He shook his head. Then what should be done? I also know that now is not a good time. Even if I try to think of ways to incorporate her into the palace, I'm afraid that she won't be able to adapt. Rui Rong is not you after all. You've had second brother planning for you for years. I dropped my eyes forlornly, also speechless. At this time, Rui Rong said, so what if the status is low? Even if it's a famous palace maid, I'm willing to do it. Ruirong, how can I condescend to you like this? The words I promised you before count for the rest of my life. From before, I promised you to be the princess, and in the future, I will make sure that you become the empress. When Lang heard Ruirong's words and hurriedly confessed, I sighed and said, Brother Lang, these words can't be said before the time is ripe, be careful of the walls have ears, it will harm Ruirong's. In any case, this matter can't be rushed for a while, it can only wait until next year's election and then make plans. In any case, this matter can't be rushed, can only wait until next year's election before making plans, this half-year's separation is inevitable, Ruirong will live in my place, I'll stay with her, Brother Lang can rest assured. It will have to be so, when Lang calmed down, nodded, and added, by the way, what are your future plans? I shook my head, what else could I have planned? When Lang looked at me, your second brother entrusted you to me, since I have to plan for you. See, you also reached the age of marriage, the next year when the draft to help you point out the marriage, you are intelligent women, this kind of thing can be delayed for 1 year or 2 years, cannot be delayed for a long time, it is better to take advantage of this half a year to pick a preferred, Brother Lang will let you scenery. He paused, I see that the new scholar Song Haran is good, the family has no wife yet, upright and very thoughtful, before the second brother is optimistic about him, I also intend to reuse. When Lang said so, I am grateful, but I really cannot imagine myself married to another man's wife, as long as I think of it, it will be difficult to restrain shaking his head to refuse, how much I would like to escape from the chaos, to find a place outside of the world, so that I can be alone to remember the good old days, and can be quiet sadness. As long as I don't have to marry someone else, even if the situation is poor and the environment is dangerous, I am willing. Isolated and quiet, lonely and sinister. Suddenly, a thought flashed from the brain, and between the lightning, a path came to mind, and the heart weighed some things from side to side, and made a decision. I asked, Brother Ron, when will the decree for this election come down? Just in the next day or two, they brought me the list yesterday and showed it to me. Ruirong interjected, there are a lot of people, aren't there? It's quite a lot, I didn't look closely, and you weren't in that list. When Lang's smile that comforted Ruirong was warm and reassuring. Then, please ask Brother Lang to go back and order that one be added to that list of candidates, seeing that both of them were puzzled, I brewed for a while and spoke decisively, add Yuer's name, and when the palace election is held admire Yuer to enter the palace. When Lang was stunned, Yuer. Ruirong was also surprised, sister. Listen to me, I spoke solemnly, Brother Chuan is gone, and Yuer has no more hope in her heart, and every time she thinks of having to sit and wait for her family to marry into a stranger's family in the future, her heart aches with pain, and she wishes only to find a place of isolation, and not to think of these troubles any more. Brother Long shoulders the weight of the mountain, the responsibility of the countryside, you must know that the harem is another court, intense as the battlefield, many things the emperor cannot interfere, want to reward want to punish to think again, lest it affects the whole body. In this way, to Ruirong's nature and background, in the palace must be difficult, Brother Lang does not protect her, she is difficult to protect themselves, protect her, she will become a target. At that time, not to mention the rise to the main consort, even the life of the day to guard against the fear of being assassinated. As for this queen position, more need long time planning and waiting, establish the queen is not the emperor a person can decide, is the whole court and even the world's big event. I looked at Wen Lang in deep thought, knowing that he already understood the advantages and disadvantages, then said, although I know more, but mostly heard, not like personal experience, if I enter the palace with Ruirong, I do not think I can successfully protect 2 people. So, now in our 3 are good only one way, that is to let your selection into the palace, in the next year before the selection of the time, you are in the palace to find out the truth, establish a firm footing, planning to pave the way, to be Ruirong into the palace or to take care of it, Brother Lang to find an opportunity to vindicate the Shi family, increase the title, and return them to the background of the official family, but also to let Ruirong in the future to get promoted to the high position. As for Ruirong, first live in my house or live in my house can be, Brother Lang to send two proper people to protect is. As for Ruirong, she can live in my house or in my house, and Brother Lang will send two proper people to protect her. When Lang pondered for a while and said, this is naturally very good, but this is not fair to you, your sacrifice is too great. Who says I am sacrificing? If I can save Yuer from having to marry someone else, then I am saving Yuer. I smiled. Furthermore, Brother Chuan also wants me to find out who is harming him. How can I do that as a woman with only a small force? If I want to find out information, how can I do it as conveniently as in the palace, and when I need Yuer, I can also assist Brother Lang. When the dust settles in the future, when the great revenge has been averted, and when Brother Lang's kingdom and mountains are secure and the beauty is embraced, then give me a quiet place where Yuer can enjoy the beauty of the sun and the moon and be accompanied by the 4 times of the day. That would be the greatest care for Yuer. Please Brother Lang be complete. Seeing that when Lang was still hesitant, I simply said, is it because Brother Lang thinks that Yuer is not qualified to enter the palace and is unwilling to waste money on keeping such a concubine? Or is it that Ruirong is jealous of me and doesn't want to share the reputation of serving a husband with me? That's fine. Ruirong herself immediately denied it, and when Lang responded accordingly. Sister Discovery, it's hard for you. There is a sentence I did not say, Ruirong if alone in the palace, when Lang and she is difficult to become a good match, I have lost when Chuan, really do not want to be surrounded by people who are separated again, it is difficult to be happy. Brother Chuan, when you entrusted me to Wen Lang, you are not entrusting Wen Lang to me. This meeting with Wen Lang, this one decision, did not change the course of my destiny, but rewrote the rest of my life. Hashtag Chapter 13. Palace walls. 2 days later, the decree came down, declared more than 5 Beijing officials, more than 4 foreign official family first daughter in the 16th of July into the palace to participate in the selection of the decree, although the decree did not specify the age limit, but the accompanying list of all the 16 years old and above the woman, of course, in addition to me. My decision and did not inform the family, and even ring pay ring bell are not very clear. The family got the decree since it is an uproar, and I have long taken advantage of these 2 days will be fine soft packed properly, to the family hurriedly sent to call my subordinate arrived, and Ruirong with 3 girls glad to return. Mother saw me and Ruirong together over, and no different look, seems to understand, but did not say anything, just sigh, then open up to go to Ruirong arrangements for the residence. 16 days early in the morning, I got up early, although in the national mourning period cannot make up, but for the solemnity of the table, light painting or necessary, I do not have the mood to make up, let the ring bell to take care of. The eyebrow painted grease point drop lip, ring bell to help me pull down the hair bun, call the girl held the clothes and jewelry to ask me what I mean, I chose a light pear yellow skirt and tulle tunic, swept a glance at the jewelry, took 4 good gold silk topaz hairpins. Seeing that I stopped picking, Huan Ling said, Miss this is too plain. Said took a few gold enameled emerald bead flowers to the mirror then to me, I hesitated for a moment, I think too gaudy, shook his head, so she changed a butterfly pearl hairpin to me hairpin in the middle of the bun. Finished dressing, I looked at the woman in the mirror, whose face was unmistakable, and ticked the corners of my mouth, trying unsuccessfully to practice a smile. Huan Pei was outside making preparations, Mother and Ruirong were sitting with me, while Huan Ling was sitting on the sidelines, restless and unsettled. I watched, but did not make a sound. Sure enough, as soon as Mother went out, she could not hold out, Miss, you will certainly be selected, right? Will you really go to the palace in the future? I naturally knew what she was going to say, how would I dare to take you to the palace when you are so fussy and indolent? You will surely cause me trouble day after day. Ring bells all of a sudden rejoice, Miss, good Miss, ring bells will not cause trouble, you just take me. Miss looks like she has known for a long time that she will go to the palace, but didn't say anything to the slave girls, I thought. Anyway, the slave girls don't leave Miss. Huan Pei pushed the door in at this time, and gave her a blank look. Just you worrying about nothing, there's no making a fuss there, you should not be taken there. When I saw Ringling's face crumble, I laughed a little. It can't be helped, I'm bound to take Ring Pei with me, and I can't bear to separate you kindred sisters, so I have to take you, the adventurous girl, with me as well. Only, going to the palace will delay your years. What use are years, as long as they accompany the lady? While Ringling's open-mindedness is sometimes less than even mine, Huan Pei smiled faintly and said, "It's been a long time since I've seen Miss Smile." When the hour came, I was told outside that the sedan chair from the Ministry of the Interior was waiting at the door, so I got up and came out, and several of my aunts and sisters-in-law came to see me off. Before boarding the sedan chair, my mother took my hand and reddened her eyes. My mother has always been everything according to you, just. My mother always hoped that you will live well in the future. I held back my tears and tried to smile. Mother, don't worry, you will be fine. All the small sedan chair are parked in front of the palace, every 10 people in a team by an inner eunuch and an aunt led into the palace. Enter the palace gate again, the same hour, the same palace, the state of mind, but with the last time there is a world of difference. Shinmu gate and enter, and last time to go to Iran Palace to see the scenery is very different. Pure women are inevitably novelty look forward to. I just lowered my head to look at the feet over a piece of green stone, heart empty, what do not want. Row to the Jinhua Palace, traditionally selection is carried out here. Candidate women were waiting in the east and west side of the hall, hot and cold, fat and thin, nearly 30 people are not lacking in a variety of temperament of the beauty. Some of the 3 or 2 quietly talking, some are silent and alone in a corner. Also saw a few familiar faces, Cold Ni Luning, lonely Chen Yanyu and the beautiful and dynamic Cui Ziki, are the last time into the palace saw. They must still be ready to compete for the throne, they care, is that position, as for who do. The emperor, that has nothing to do. I can't help but sneer in my mind when I think about it. Cui Ziki saw me and pulled a woman beside her towards me, smiling while saying to the woman, "Pure Sheng, this is the Mu family's Guan Yu that I told you about. Originally you were the youngest in this selection," but she was told to snatch it away. The words were not malicious, but her voice was eloquent and very attractive, and when she said this, many of the surrounding women's gazes were fixed on me. In this strict and cautious selection, I am the only woman who is less than 16 to be selected. Anyone knows that it must be the will of the higher-ups, naturally attracting people's attention. When I saw it, I busily said, "Sister Cui made fun of me, Guan Yu is grateful for the grace of the Lord, and I am terrified." I smiled and turned to the woman next to her, "This must be Sister Feng." That Feng Chunsheng is quite shy, only nodded, has not yet spoken out. Was Cui Ziki took over? Yes, the last time we went to the palace when we met is her sister. Their sister's zither skills are top. Another chat for a moment. An eunuch came to notify the Empress Dowager. The consort and the emperor came over, told the women to be selected according to the order of rank in the family, every 4 people in a row to enter the main hall. Father is from the 2nd rank, and I am listed in the 3rd row with the 2 ministers and the family of the vice-general of the capital garrison. After about tea, watching the first 2 rows of people out of the main hall in turn, those women did not have any special expression. The decree of the eunuch loudly reported the name of the selected, and not surprisingly most of them were selected. My turn in this row, I lowered my head, in the last row into the main hall. After kneeling, with a cry from above, "Lift up your heads, all of them." I saw Wen Lang sitting on the right side of the main seat, the left side of the Gui Taifei, Shu Taifei, and the main seat in the middle of the Empress Dowager, that in the old days, once 8-faced, but also once sad and desperate imperial consort. Looking at the Empress Dowager, for a moment, I lost my concentration. The Empress Dowager looks familiar and unfamiliar, bereaved of her son to preside over the establishment of the Crown Prince, sandwiched between the grandson and son of the left and right. The next the late emperor also left her. Before and after the 20 days within the successive loss of a son lost his husband, when Lang succeeded to the throne, she has to be busy in front of the auxiliary to play the point. The back of the asterisk hold the late emperor a large number of concubines resettlement. Matters, I heard that the Jifan was also received by the palace to raise, the next is the great funeral, and now is the selection, I think she is so busy that she doesn't even have time to grieve. Is in a trance, suddenly found at the hall quiet down, all eyes are focused on me. I realized that I was thinking about the wrong thing, but still know the rules, hurriedly pressed the heart, not panicked, dignified blessed salute, my daughter Mu Guanyu, 15 years old, the father of the ministry of the right minister Mu Fangzhe. As a rule, I and other 4 people reported the name of the family, it should be a few masters briefly discuss, and then by the Empress Dowager to decide to stay in the selection of the person, but at this time the above is no one out of the blue. The Empress Dowager has looked at me for a while, from her eyes, I saw first surprise, then probing look, she even frowned. I think my appearance was a surprise to her. How could a woman who was out of line and heartily in love with Prince Wenchuan appear at this time of selection? Wen Lang is inconvenient to speak first, so there is this momentary cold field, the noble consort to see this situation, ambiguous, I see that these are also good. Xu Taifei remembered me, only to see her light smile, yes, this crown pleasure is sister has long liked, since to stay. The Empress Dowager scanned the week and finally looked at me, slowly saying, the Duan family's stay, the Mu family's mourners do like it, but the age is still young, right? Hashtag chapter 14 The Palace Walls, 2, hashtag Xu Taifei was stunned, she is aware of my age is not the rules, thought the Empress Dowager would like to make an exception to call me into the palace, thinking of doing a favor at the moment. Do not think that the Empress Dowager is not appreciated, at this time the face of a snappy, had to look to the Wen Lang, I can appear here, is not the Empress Dowager's will, it is naturally the Emperor's golden mouth. The Duan family and the Mu family's stay, enter the palace on a later date, all go down. Wen Lang couldn't keep his mouth shut at this point, and simply came to a conclusion. The Empress Dowager looked at him, did not say anything, just look at me. Again, that gaze is much more complex. I secretly sighed, I know that the Empress Dowager must have a stigma against me, can only find a chance to explain later. The steward inner eunuch received the decree and busily led the 4 of us to retreat. As I stepped out of the temple door, I heard the voice of the inner eunuch who pronounced the decree, stay, Duan Zilin, the first daughter of the vice-general of the capital city guard. Stay, Mu Guanyu, the first daughter of the right minister of the Ministry of Revenue. This pronouncement shocked me a cold shiver, a moment of tears violently filled the eyes, rolled out. While people are not paying attention, I busy a hand to wipe away the tears, take a deep breath, along with the crowd back to the east side of the hall. I was selected, a few were let to the side halls, the selected will be sent out of the palace one after another. Waiting for about an hour, the selection is complete, all the selected women into the main hall to thank, according to the selection of the old rules, at this time, it will be registered status, under the title, the selected women will formally become the harem concubines. But because in the late emperor's mourning period, need to be full of 3 months before marriage, the royal family is no exception, so after bowing, there will be the internal affairs of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the decree, a total of 21 selected women. The capital officials' home can return to their homes, the outskirts of the city will be placed in the capital of a royal residence. 10 days after the unity of the palace of practice, to be the late emperor's mourning period. Is over then to be enshrined. After the ceremony, it was already Shan hour, out of the temple, Cui Ziki and Feng Chunxing greeted me, Cui Ziki took my hand, the 3 of us can be companions in the palace in the future. I smiled and nodded yes, she added, Pure Sheng is 2 months younger than me, and just turned 16 half a month ago, where is Guan Yu? I'm from October, and it's coming up. That's good, we're the same year, not more than a few months apart, we'll be good sisters from now on. Said Cui Ziki to wrist a pair of jasper bracelets off, stuffed to me in Pure Sheng one hand I'm the older sister, this is a meeting gift. That Feng Chunxing at this time also no longer shy, unwrapped the neck of the jade pendant to Cui Ziki, and will be a point of emerald gold hairpin into my hands, warm smile, this time I also do back to the sister. I dress up today is not complicated, empty wrists, neck also only with silk thread hanging a bead, really cannot take the hand, a little thought, only from the head to pull down 2 gold silk topaz hairpin, divided to her 2. Chui Ziki took the hairpin, took a close look at it, and said to Feng Chunsheng, look, it looks like a simple hairpin, but it's top quality topaz, we've really made a profit. It seems like we need to get closer to Sister Yu in the future. So the 3 of them all hid their faces and laughed. The women were led out of the palace by the eunuch. The palace entrance is very lively, each side of a long row of exquisite and expensive royal palanquin, next to the house of the maids. From afar, I saw the ring bell looking forward to see me busy welcoming up. I looked at the dozens of people in front of the palace are full of joy, but the heart is not half a point of joy, forced to pull a smile to Chui Ziki and Feng Chunsheng nodded goodbye, they want to get on the sedan chair. The little inner supervisor who sent me out saw me like this, and busily bowed, servant respectfully sends off little Lord Mu. I understand in my heart that he is asking for reward, did not stop, since the ring bell out of the silver reward, the little eunuch joyfully left, Ring Pei help me on the sedan chair, because of that Ni Luning and Chen Yen you have not yet gone, I am not convenient to go first, only had to wait. Sitting in the sedan chair, I turned in my mind, lifted the curtain and said to Ringling, go and see whose family is selected in the capital, and get close to the maids who know what they're doing, and by the way, also inquire about the provinces. Ring bell for people clever and bright, very good at this, see her answer to go. I was about to put down the curtains alone quiet, suddenly unintentionally skimmed across the crowd of a green-shirt woman, know that she is also one of the selected women, and do not know, look at the dress, the family should also be good, I do not know why at this time a look of anxiety and embarrassment, frowning lightly frowned, looking around. Her side only send her out of the palace of the internal supervisor, but no maid waiting in the sedan chair side, micro-observation, has seemed to understand. She is so uncomfortable, must be her maid somehow failed to come, and she has no silver reward. In my dynasty, in the selection of the showgirls will be a big reward. For lackeys, so send off in the selection of the showgirls has always been a fat one, the inner supervisors are you scramble for me, the selection must be even more. The green-shirt woman beside the small inner supervisor must also be struggling to come to this errand, do not want to meet this situation, the face has revealed a look of impatience, although the jewelry reward is not impossible, but in the end it will cause people to laugh. I whispered to the ring of pay command 2 sentences, the ring of pay nodded to the past, pulled out the silver to send away the eunuch, and helped the woman on the sedan chair, the woman on the sedan chair before looking towards me over, full of gratitude to me nodded down, I also returned a smile, and only then peacefully hidden into the sedan chair. Waiting for a while, along with Ni Luning and Chen Yen Yu's departure, all the sedan chair also one after another to go, to be my return home, aunts and brothers and sisters-in-law have been guarded at the door, although there is not a title, but after all, I have been the identity of the harem master, in addition to father and mother, the family is required to salute me. I couldn't take it, I sidestepped and avoided it, so the crowd swarmed me into the gate. 10 days of the period will come in a flash, during this period, the whole family up and down are dedicated to help me take care of the palace goods, this is to go south of the big brother also postpone the date of departure from the capital, for me to search for a lot of curiosities, jewelry, there are many gold and silver money into my box. In order for me to be able to establish a firm foothold in that up and down the money to be used in the harem. Instead, I do not need to take care of too many things, in addition to parents, the most is with Rueron Company, although in my home is very safe, but I still do not feel at ease, detailed instructions to her all the matters, and entrusted her to my mother, until the 8th day, when Lang sent envoys to the house, I only peace of mind to stop. Early this morning, the Ministry of the Interior early to send people to pick up, before leaving home, I saw my parents, with tears in my eyes and bowed, Mom and Dad, you child is unfilial. Gently pushing away my sister-in-law who came over to help me, I wanted to say something, but I couldn't put it into words, and I just silently wept. Everyone is speechless, mother is also in tears, or father said, "You child, father really do not want you to leave home so early, but the imperial grace, this is also your blessing. I don't want you to honor your ancestors, as long as you are safe. The good thing is that our family is still in a good position. What do you need on weekdays, despite sending someone to send a letter is, Dad and your brothers can always give you to do." I gradually calmed down, grateful, nodded my head, and my mother wiped her tears and said, "The harem is not like home, everything should be extremely secure, you must be careful and cautious, if you can send news, always let my mother know you are safe." Thousands of words against no words, facing the mother, I can only nod uncontrollably, force down the feelings of reluctance, and one by one with the people to pay goodbye. Ring Pei Ring Ling over to help me tidy up my makeup, help me step by step towards the gorgeous sedan chair. I hard heart no longer turn back, also ignore that come to pick up my deacon within the eunuch's bow, straight on the sedan chair fell curtains. I closed my eyes tightly in the sedan chair, but could not stop the tears pouring. Mother choked outside the will ring pay ring bells, every word I heard in my ears, even if there are 1,000 sadness, I finally did not look out again, let the sedan chair steadily forward. Soon arrived at the palace door, stopped the sedan chair to inform, there is the internal affairs of the steward lifted the curtain to see. The eunuch smiled in a rather charming manner, slave to Mu Xiaoyang, welcome to Mu Xiaoyang. At this time I had already wiped away my tears and faintly pursed my lips, thank you, eunuch. Outside of the ring Pei followed over to distribute the reward silver, the crowd of internal supervisors since the joy. A few moments, once again up sedan chair forward, my dynasty rules, the newly elected small master into the palace regardless of status can take the sedan chair and enter, for many of the low concubines are not favored, this may be the only time the palace sedan chair opportunity. Today due to pick up all the little master into the palace, the street has been set up a ban, although not in the past days of the hustle and bustle, or can hear the sound of people. After entering the palace gate, the surroundings steeply quiet, even the bearer's footsteps are extremely light, the ear can only hear the sedan chair body traveling when the squeaky new sound. I know that the moment I enter this palace, I have already become one of Wen Lang's harem, and when I am crowned in the future, I will be one of the many concubines, and I will no longer be Guan Yu, but Mu Xiaolong, as well as a certain title, a certain position in the future. I gently lifted the curtain by a slit and looked at the bluestones that moved by one after another below, and I knew that the road ahead led not only to a certain palace, but also to the harem that was full of hooks and intrigues, to a vast and lonely wilderness, and to a noisy battlefield where no smoke was seen. Chapter 15, Jinsue, sedan chair fell, someone hit up the curtain, in front of a palace, the door plaque on the 3 big words Jinzi Palace, has been in charge of the ant ho in the doorway, respectfully said, respectfully invite the young master. Huan Pei reached out to help, I deliberately pause a meal, before helping Huan Pei down the sedan chair, at this time the back again came a small sedan chair, down a blue woman, and do not know, that the stewardship of the ant to see the situation blessed a salute, slave girl Jinsue Palace Su Su see the 2 young masters. Although Su Su said so, but towards me in worship, I just want to speak, the woman in blue will be a few steps to meet the front, auntie cannot be polite, Yao first arrived, do not know anything, in the future you have to auntie more carrot. She brought the maid then sent a silver ingot as a reward, that Su Su received the reward, steady smile, thank you for the small master reward, really killing slave girl, what need small master command is. Ringling whispered in my ear at that moment, this is from the Xian Wang Daotai family. I ticked the corners of my mouth slightly at that, and made no comment. When that Wang Yao was led by the palace maid into the gate of Jinshi Palace, Su Su hurriedly turned around again, little Lord Mu has waited for a long time. The slave girl has already arranged the premises properly, and will lead the young master in to settle down. Seeing her like this, I thought that Wen Lang must have given orders, so I didn't ask too many questions and only smiled lightly, auntie doesn't need to be polite. Jinsue Palace adjacent to the Jinhua Palace, is a very large palace, traditionally to be selected showgirls and selected after the small master has not been enthroned are living here, by the teaching ants to teach the rules of the palace. Also because of this purpose, Jinzi Palace in addition to the main hall outside of the dozen halls and courtyards are not divided into primary and secondary, landscape furnishings are similar, in order to the first into the palace has not yet been enthroned small masters are the same, lest in the future got the heart of the high-ranking indignation, to the Jinzi Palace of the stewardship of the people caused by the undeserved disaster. Around a few turns, I followed the Su to the northernmost end of the Jinshir Palace of a courtyard. The name, Plum House, is the Jinshir Palace in the 6 smaller courtyards one. According to the rules, if it is a candidate for the showgirls, the spring, summer, autumn, winter, stars and moon, 6 compounds live 6 people, plum orchids, bamboo, chrysanthemums and fragrant, 6 small compounds live 4 people. I have been selected due to the status of the different, and according to the rules of the 2 maids to bring their own into the palace, then the big compounds to live in 3. The small compounds arranged for 2. The small courtyard arrangement of 2. I was led into the main hall of this plum courtyard. Su personally called over in this courtyard waiting for an eunuch a palace maid to introduce to me, Mu small master. This is divided in the plum courtyard waiting for Xiao Mei and Xiao Yong, for the small master's dispatch, to be later after the title of the Internal Affairs Bureau will be assigned in accordance with the rules of the temple and the lackeys. This period of time there is not considerate of the hope that the small master more to bear with me. Thank you, auntie, I nodded, knowing that there should be another in this courtyard. I wonder which sister is the other one living in this courtyard. Su Sui bowed his head, back to little lord. This plum courtyard has not arranged for other little lords for the time being. I was stunned, knowing that it was probably Wen Lang's arrangement, only that such preferential treatment seemed too obvious and inevitably invited gossip. See me pondering, Su and said, small master do not have to worry, Jinzi Palace Court is still more, this time into the palace of the small master a total of more than 20, and to live in the days than the previous session of the longer, so comply with the emperor's instructions are arranged to live loosely. Some of these small courtyards are mostly only live one. I smiled faintly, the heart sigh Wen Lang's painstaking, this new small master of the premises arranged by the small things, not to mention that should not interfere with the emperor. I'm afraid that even the Empress Dowager is not bothered to ask, so no more to say. Order ring bells rewarded an ingot of gold to that Su, thank to send her back. I looked at Xiao Mei and Xiao Yong who stood there side by side in a slightly formal manner, both not very old. One was in a pale green low-class palace dress, the other was dressed in light gray ordinary inner eunuch's costume. In the palace, these 2 kinds of clothes are the most common. In a way, these kinds of dull and monotonous colors also represent this brilliant and pale palace. Thinking about this, a smirk rippled up the corners of his mouth with a bit of sneer and self-deprecation. Back to look at the 2 of them again, has become a little terrified by the constraints, lowered their heads, but carefully sneak a look at me. I will be the corner of the mouth of the smile unfolded, asked that Xiao Mei, this name of yours is quite apt with this plum yard. That Xiao Mei honorably voiced back to the little master, slave girl's name is according to this courtyard, not only slave girl, the rest of the 11 courtyards also have a Qiao word head of the palace maids, Qiaolan Qiaozhu's generation are there. I found it interesting to hear, 12 coincidences. That's very rare, I wonder who named you. I did not expect. Xiao Mei actually laughed a little, said, where rare. Jintue Palace maid inside supervisor changed diligently, 12 coquettish but just the name, people early don't know how many stubble change. Slave girl led this name for almost 3 years, and don't know the original is who start, it should be which stewardship ant for the convenience of the tube, according to the courtyard name. I froze, and then understood, this is the successive showgirls small masters live in the place. Those women into the palace, naturally will be quite trust the first waiting for the palace, a dynasty of the seal, will be Jinzi Palace of the palace of the palace of the female eunuchs to go. It is also common sense. I saw this Xiao Mei delightful and generous, the words are also clever, the heart has given birth to a few points of like, then asked her, this former Xiao Mei must have been promoted or out of the palace, right? The late emperor 2 years have not been elected, you are waiting for more than 2 years, have you ever been anxious? I thought that Xiao Mei would be able to answer eloquently, but I didn't expect her to suddenly darken her face, and after a pause, she only said, the slave girl doesn't dare to be in a hurry. Then she did not say anything. I was puzzled, and did not rush to ask, that Xiao Mei obviously do not want to say again, froze do not know what to think, or Xiao Yong pushed her a hand, said to me, little master all the way hard, time is not early, slave this will go to serve meals. Xiao Mei also came back to her senses at this time, and busily made a deep bow, the slave girl is insolent, little lord atone for her sins. I smile a little and nod, you guys go ahead. The two of them retreated, Huan Pei and Huan Ling were busy around, I was thinking about my mind and didn't pay attention to it. Until the ring bell called out to me several times, I only raised my head and heard Huan Pei say, Miss, things are all packed up, go in and rest for a while. I did not comment, got up and walked to the courtyard. This plum courtyard really has plum trees, but unfortunately, this July light, no flowers and no fruit, so I want to sigh have no way to send, just expressionless pacing. The sun shines brightly in the sky, sunburned shoulders slightly hot, people are also hot, the heart is slightly disturbed, when Lang for me to arrange this more than a month of quiet days, naturally, is not for me to be pampered, rest and recuperation, I still need to carefully plan, set a favorable start. When Lang succeeded to the throne without a consort without concubines, so there is no official concubines, this situation can be said to have mixed advantages and disadvantages, the advantages of the people on the no suppression, do not need to converge, since they can show their skills. Of course, the disadvantages are also here, a time hard to distinguish between high and low, I am afraid it is difficult to avoid confusion for a while. It is also good to give me a time to examine all the people, so that I can see the future more clearly, so that I can fulfill my mission of entering the palace. Now that I have arrived here, I have to let go of my nameless grief, no matter how dangerous or difficult what I am going to do is, I always have to make myself face it positively, and let myself live a good life so that Brother Chuan will feel at ease. Thinking of this, my heart gradually cleared up, squinting my eyes at this courtyard full of sunshine, I let out a long breath, turned around, looked at the somewhat bemused Huanpei Huanling who stood by the side, and revealed a warm smile, two beauties. I'm hungry. The two girls jumped up at once, openly let me into the inner hall, at this time the coquettish Plum has been meals on the table set up, see me come in busy serving tea and take a seat, the expression has no half a bit different. I know that her heart must have her story, I'm new to this since I cannot ask what, do not have to rush for a moment, the next day will be long. Xiao Mei sent out, Ring Pei and Ring Bell to come over, serving me to prepare dinner, I called them together, two people push but also sat down. They see me still in a good mood, they will you a word I read a word about the first into the palace, I also do not interrupt, just listening to the two chatting energetically, faint smile, have a bite without a bite of food. A meal is finished, I finally spoke, I am afraid that this palace is not so simple in your eyes, huge and gorgeous behind, danger exists everywhere, I do not want to go out before the first body to die, also do not want to lose any of you, we can only rely on each other in the future, into one, so you must be 100 times more cautious, become my strong help, I will also try to protect you all. Huan Pei and Huan Ling were not expected, rashly heard this talk panicked stood up, the two were silent for a moment, or Huan Pei opened his mouth, Miss, you are the slave girl and Huan Ling's only family, slave girls are sparing their lives, will always protect in front of the Miss, always accompanied by the Miss, at the Miss's beck and call. The always eloquent Ringling was actually unable to speak, only nodding her head vigorously. I also nodded, I trust you all since. Go on, inquire about the arrangements for the next few days, as well as the courtyards of all the young lords. Ring Pei Ring Bell went out, I called Xiao Mei came in to change an ice basin, then sat by the window, casually flipping through a book of poetry, after a small half an hour, Ring Pei came in to report, the Ministry of Internal Affairs told half an hour after the Jinzue Palace of all the young masters and family with slave girls to the main hall to gather, by the Ministry of Internal Affairs supervisor and the Empress Dowager's palace of the old grandmother to talk about matters in the palace. I nodded my head, and read for another moment, before sitting in front of the mirror to fix my hair. The ring bell helped me to redraw my hair bun, with a few hairpin rings that are not outstanding, changed into a light pink coat, then took 2 maids to run to the main hall. Outside the main hall, I deliberately slowed down my pace, saw 6 or 7 young masters with the girls into the hall door. I stepped in, not in front of, not behind, standing in the middle of the crowd. Chen Yanyu and Ni Luning is still the focus of the crowd. Chen Yanyu's own noble momentum at this time to play to the fullest, by several smiling faces around her, occasionally smiling and dignified should be on a few sentences, will not be far from the words not into the distance pinpointed to the right place, caused by more currying favor with the compliments of her own enjoyment of which, my heart also secretly prays. Ni Lining's side still had an icy look that refused to let people in. Even so, her huge family background still attracted a lot of faces that wanted to get close to her, and it lingered. For a moment, I seemed to see her frown slightly, making me wonder if Ni Lining's coldness was a result of her nature, or a mask she put on herself because she was not good at getting around people. In addition to the two, the governor of Jiangnan Yao Dingshan's daughter Yao Qian and Cui Xiaofu's daughter Cui Ziki in the crowd is also quite eye-catching, a charming and a dynamic, or let a person never forget the woman. Cui Ziki also saw me at this time, still as casual as ever, pulling Feng Chunqing towards me. Sister, you. I was just mentioning you, and then you arrived. I smiled faintly, a little helpless voice, is my sister. Still making fun of my sister's young age? Cui Ziki and Feng Chunqing glanced at each other and hid their faces as they laughed. Cui Ziki said, silly sister, your age has long since ceased to be a novelty. Just see her mysterious smile, close to me, was about to speak, a voice suddenly remembered at the side of the body, yes, the age of less than 16 is not selection rules, but at least it is not out of order. I heard that some people have been involved with the former prince and then entered the palace to serve the emperor. The court is controversial. Hashtag Chapter 16, Jinsui, 2, Cui Ziki was coldly cut off by a bystander, since he turned his head to look, while I heard this was violently shocked, along with turning his head away, face trying to remain calm, his heart has already risen waves. The person who opened the mouth is that Wang Yiyao who arrived at the same time as me at the Jinzi Palace, a lake blue dress, a few pieces of enamel jewelry set her off in a fairly elegant way, and it seems that near the front, this Wang Yiyao's appearance is also good. Despite her mean words, I have no time to care, the heart is just wondering how my things will be passed out, the brain has been screening leaks in the person, think about it to no avail, just hope that she will speak clearly. However, this Wang Yiyao is not to continue this topic, but a very respectful and good behavior to the Ziki greetings, a few sister good. Yao has been a long-time friend of her sister, and she feels even closer to her sister, so I hope she will take care of her more in the future. This climbing words are not inappropriate, but slightly far-fetched. Ziki froze for a moment, and then sank into a rare face, did not talk, only Rusty nodded. Wang Yao a passion met cold, a moment some embarrassment, or Feng Chunqing gentle rounded off, in the future are sisters, since each other to take care of. Wang Yao got a step, and took over the words, the selection of such a woman into the palace, really unreasonable, even if it can be promised to others as a concubine, but also should not come into the palace. I don't know who this person is, think also in us, I think it is really humiliated sister's identity. This sounds more and more harsh, I see she does not know exactly who, just want to refute a few sentences, there are people listening to the past, this is biased, always the official woman's marriage is not their own, who is not subject to fate, how can I and so on how to fall on the well again. That the matter of the court, more not we should discuss, sister so delusional, inevitably have to the emperor and the late Prince Jingqing disrespect suspected. I heard this very useful, follow the sound and go, smile out, the person who spoke is actually recognized, it is the selection of that day in the palace door saw the green shirt woman. She obviously also recognized me, the expression from indignation quickly turned to joy, approached to slightly salute, Yuan Yen see sister, that day thanks to sister help. Ziki's silverling laughter sounded again, hee hee. There are still benefactors to meet. Sister Yuan, Guan Yu is the youngest of our sisters, I'm afraid it will be hard for anyone to call her sister until next year. I also laughed and took Yuan Yan's hand, that's right, just call me Yuer. For a while we several people you a word I a word gossip up, that Wang Yao was Yuan Yen snatch refute a few sentences did not have the opportunity to speak again, and then cannot insert the words, only to stand in silence at the side. My heart is still thinking about the incident, just want to find a reason to ask a careful, do not want to internal affairs of the Ministry of Internal Affairs in charge of the internal supervisor has brought an old sister into the main hall, the crowd quickly stopped talking. I knew that the matter was not yet clear and that I could not be in a hurry, so I had to put up with it for the time being. The chief of the inner supervisor first handed over a few words of the scene, then greeted all the little master of the home with the maid to the courtyard training, the old sister began to recount the basic etiquette of the palace and several kinds of unforgivable sins, the tone of voice is not slow, respectful with the majesty, so that people have to listen carefully. Finally, the will of the young masters need to concentrate on learning the rules of etiquette, do not slack off, and assign to the various houses of the correctional ant, before leaving. I returned with a few women who knew each other, one after another after parting, only Yuan Yen and I were left on the same road, I smiled gently at her, Sister Yuan, you just refuted that Wang Xiaolong. Before the words were finished, Yuan Yen puffed and laughed, and then snorted, she is not bad in terms of talent and appearance, but she is always trying to climb up the ranks of the powerful and the rich, and her thoughts are all about stepping on the low and the high, and she has not even entered the palace yet, but she is busy all day long with openly buying people's hearts, and secretly ruling out the dissenters, so that when she has been conferred with the title, she may not be able to create a wave of trouble. I was surprised to hear that Yuan Yan's view of Wang Yao was quite similar to what I had in mind, and as for the slight resentment in her tone, I raised an eyebrow and said, Sister must have suffered from that Wang Xiaolong's calculations. Yuan Yan looked embarrassed, I've made you laugh. I smiled slightly and waited for her to follow. Yuan Yan is not coy, generous said, by her calculation and not only me, where she poses a threat and cannot be used for its women are a thorn in her side, you do not know, live in the royal residence, she is domineering inertia, and she lives in a courtyard with two very outstanding appearance of the foreign official's daughter, she is able to avoid the avoidance of not wanting to or both in the selection of the pre-suddenly sick, have no choice. Quit the selection of the list, the clear-eyed people know that must have nothing to do with her, just everyone dares not say just, I really can't see, with the side of the discussion a few words, but has been her grudge in the heart. With a turn in my mind, I asked, that day outside the palace gate. Yuan Yan's face was aghast, it was she who did this, intent on making a fool of me. I calmly said, if that's the case, she's giving you the slip, eradicating and suppressing the branching obstacles around her before she enters the palace, and she's quite capable of doing so. Yuan Yan listened with a few points of dissatisfaction and helplessness, that Wang Yao heart is quite high, although not so much as to covet the throne, must also be directed to the high position to go, I don't understand, what is so good about this palace, so many fancy women, and how many people can get the king's grace, so much effort to eradicate dissenters, and also day to day to prevent retaliation, not to mention the hard work, but not to be able to get what you want, might as well make a few close friends, and spend the rest of their lives more openly and happily. It would be better to make a few good friends and spend the rest of your life with them, more open and happy. I heard quite moved, the heart cannot help but feel emotion, went forward and pulled Yuan Yan's hand, said, Sister Thin Power, really let you admire tight, that Wang Yao, although arrogant, but calculating revenge things are floating on the surface, everyone knows that there will be nothing to hide, cannot be counted as clever, to prevent is also easy, not a thing. See Yuan Yen have not understand the color, I said again. She said that the background of the daughter of the Dao Tai is not small, said that the big is also not big, behavior and speech but no fear, must be someone to support the emboldened, behind her talent is a powerful role, will not be easy to the current, so the sister of those ideas with the Yuer said just, and the other people will still have to be on the defensive a little bit, although the sister has no intention of the court. Struggle, always have to protect themselves, even if not for themselves, do not want to exhaust the family is. Always have to protect themselves, even if not for their own, but also do not want to exhaust the family is. Yuan Yen heard the words stayed for a moment, and then said, I did not think of these, I thought she was already bad people, listening to you this. I went to the palace, this is also for the peace of the home, it seems to be really reckless. I laughed, no harm, this is only the first day, the situation is still unclear, strong hands like clouds, Shi Wang Yao may not be able to sit on one side, sister may wish to wait and see. Yuan Yan's eyes were full of emotion, and she held my hand tightly, don't call me sister, last time you helped me, I haven't repaid you yet, and now you've woken me up again, we are sisters and even better, from now on I'll call each other by our first names, okay? I also liked this love-hate woman in front of me from the bottom of my heart, and smiled gently, naturally good. Walking and chatting, I learnt that Yuan Yan's father is a Shandong province from the 5th grade officials, she was not among the candidates, but the selection according to the rules of the provinces need to share the quota, because of Shandong province more than the 4th grade officials' family coincidentally no unmarried women of the right age, as a rule, they chose the 2 5th grade officials' daughters in the Beijing. If not selected just, if the palace, the official will be able to get from the 4th grade salary, to receive a false post, but also it is not against the will. Yuan Yen is her father's oldest daughter, since childhood at home was baby tight, parents brother and sister all the way to grow up, this point and I have a few similarities, this time she and her family are not willing to participate in the election, but forced to her father's top boss of the coercion of the family's peace. Yuan Yen had to leave her parents in tears, to the Beijing to participate in the election. I thought it would be just to lose the election, but I did not want to be selected, and had to break the idea of going home to be reunited. When she arrived at the fork in the road at Yuan Yan's residence, Huanling, who hadn't been following her, ran all the way here carrying her skirt and shouted urgently, Miss. Miss. Nearby to stand and see Yuan Yen, want to say, Yuan Yen see the situation will be with me about another day to talk in depth, said goodbye and left. I sent her a few steps and twisted back, frowning at Ringling, the palace is not like home, why are you still so open and furtive? Ringling shrunk her head at my words and whispered, the slave girl knows she is wrong. Immediately after that the voice rose again, but Miss, seeing my face sink, she hurriedly came forward and pressed her voice, Miss, you heard the rumors from the crowd today, the slave girl just went to count the items and spied out a major news, it turns out that what they are talking about is not you, Miss. I was taken aback, who else could this woman associated with the former prince be but me? Miss, this time the selection was to choose 21 young masters to enter the palace, but I heard that the top has made an extra exception outside of these 21, saying that they will enter the palace tomorrow. I was even more puzzled as to who was the one who wasn't among the 21 and was involved with Chuan's brother. Hashtag Chapter 17 Prologue, the mind quickly filters through the candidates and a name flashes through the mind, could it be? I blurted out, Song Binding. Ringling nodded, it is precisely the scholar's younger sister, the Song family's eldest young lady, who was once assigned to His Highness as a side consort. The news made my heart flutter hard, and I didn't make a sound, only lowered my eyes and slowly walked back. The upper head, I do not know which upper head, Song Binding, that famous talented girl, innocently involved in this change, but also in such a capacity in way into the palace, her heart must also not be good. Along the cool quiet path back to the plum courtyard, a few maids counting and tending to the items allocated by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, ring bells see me unhappy, they held a few pieces of just received back to the palace exhibition to me to see, one side also kept chattering about the color of this good clothing material is poor, that style is not good, but the workmanship is really exquisite. I have something in mind, cannot mention the interest, and a false response to a few words. They got up and went into the bedroom and ordered them not to come in to disturb me. I have something on my mind, I can't get excited. I answered a few sentences in vain, then I got up and went into the bedroom, ordered them not to come in to disturb me. Ring bell soon serve dinner in, I have no appetite, just ask them to put aside, the day gradually dark, we'll spend the first night in this palace. I look out the window, the heart or emotion. The two girls dragged and refused to go out, straight told me to use a little, at this time, but heard people coming outside, Ring Pei even rushed to welcome out. I was a little surprised, the rules of the palace, into the night is not free to visit, in this Jinzi palace in the implementation of the more stringent, so this time someone to come, if not an important thing is to follow the decree. Keeping an eye on the movement outside, the visitor sounded like an inner eunuch, passing on the words of the Ministry of the Interior, to ring bell to follow a trip, there are important things to order. I couldn't help but frown when I heard this, and exchanged a glance with Ringling. How could this House of the Interior have such a strange command? And just as I wanted to go out and ask what was going on, I heard Huanpei say, "Eunuch, wait a moment, the slave girl will go in and report with our young master, and then I will go with you." Huanpei quickly entered the inner room, and before I could say anything, she pulled me to sit down in front of the mirror and whispered, "Miss, outside is Eunuch Chang Yuan." I had an epiphany, he came over to call, that must be Brother Lang's meaning, so I gently nodded my head, and Ringling then went out again. The ring bell understood, hurriedly hand and foot nimble to help me remove the hairpin, redrew a maid's hair bun. The incident was so sudden that I didn't have any clothes ready, so Ringling took off her coat and gave it to me to change into, and as she tidied it up, she chattered, "I've just received a new coat today, so I'll lend it to you to wear for a while." I smiled, not bothering to care about her. Huanpei came in again to see that I had already packed up, saying, "Xiao Mei and Xiao Yong branched out, let's go." To the outhouse, Chang Yuan gave me 1,000, I nodded with a smile, did not say much, followed him out of the plum courtyard, by the back door of the Jinzi palace and out. The palace at this time would have been less people walking around, Chang Yuan and pick some secluded path, so until through a small door into the Qian Yuan palace, the three of us along the way did not run into any bystanders. Qian Yuan palace in the bright lights, near but did not see what subordinates, must have long been arranged. Chang Yuan led me to a palace door, reported to the temple, "Your Majesty, people come." A voice was heard from inside, "Come in." Pushing the door, I saw Wen Lang behind the table at a glance, and when he saw me, he stood up with a smile on his face. I saw that there were still 3 or 4 inner eunuchs and palace maidens in the temple, so I didn't dare to make a fuss, and kneeled down with Huanpei to bow, "Slave girl, see your Majesty." Wen Lang, no movement, only to hear Chang Yuan will be several eunuchs and court ladies are sent out, until the sound of footsteps far away, Wen Lang said, "You child, quickly get up." After Huanpei and I got up, Wen Lang signaled Chang Yuan to stand guard outside the door, and Huanpei followed him out, leaving only Wen Lang and I in the side hall. Looking at the front of the Wen Lang, I cannot help but hesitate in my heart. A white gold dragon embroidered tunic will be his already long and straight body lined with more extraordinary, although there is no last time we met that the bright yellow sense of oppression, but in the middle of this hallowed palace, Wen Lang in front of the imperial case and the hands of less than the down of the folders, are all show his status as an emperor, so that I look away. But Wen Lang's gentle yet tired gaze eventually washed away my concerns. "Your Majesty, Brother Lang." I opened my mouth with a light smile, shouting both titles together. Wen Lang laughed a little helplessly, "You are, in the future, when no one is around, let's be like before." I raised my eyebrows and nodded my head and smiled, "Yes, your Majesty commands." "You are obeys." Without waiting for Wen Lang to speak, I added, "Is Brother Lang still not used to it?" Wen Lang sighed, "It's not that I'm not accustomed to it, but I miss the leisurely days of the past, but everything around me has changed, and it's only when I saw you that I found a few traces of it again. Said, pulled me to the side of the couch to sit. I looked at Wen Lang's eyes, softly said, Brother Lang, body system of the world, all the people look up to, for the ancestral foundation, thousands of people always have to sacrifice some freedom. Can inherit the benevolent government of the late emperor, so that my dynasty people rich and strong, the world is stable and peaceful, Brother Chuan in heaven's spirit will also rejoice. When I said that, I bit my lip and lowered my eyes, looking only at the pad in my hand. Wen Lang gently stroked my shoulder, and after a few moments of silence, his voice was low and firm, it will be. I blinked, swallowed the sourness, and unfolded a smile, and Wen Lang smiled warmly as well, that same expression as Wen Chuan's, which made me settle down and trust, and lose my heart. After a while, Wen Lang got to the point, what do you think of these women who have entered the palace this time? All of them are ladies of the house, and not a few of them are famous, and the beauties are as pleasing to the eye as to the eye. I pertinent evaluation, Wen Lang faint smile, indicating that I continue, I shook my head, just entered the palace, still do not see clearly, only know that the green and calm, each has its own autumn. Several heavy ministers in the family, prepared, all not to be underestimated. Wen Lang gently nodded, slightly frowned, see him ask this situation, I have a slight estimate in my heart, Wen Lang at this time is certainly no mind to explore how the harem women, must be the Empress Dowager or the court is concerned about this side. As expected, only Wen Lang pondered slightly, did you come prepared? It seems that this harem is also going to be unsettled. I understood, and said blandly, it's to choose a queen in a hurry, isn't it? Wen Lang face with a helpless color, the dynasty almost every day someone picks the head to discuss this, the sword tensions, make me worry to the extreme, but cannot help. The candidates for the debate are Ni Loning and Chen Yenyu. Seeing Wen Lang nod, I asked, what about the Empress Dowager's meaning? Wen Lang shook his head, the Empress Dowager is also troubled, only said that this matter is important, the court can only listen to the discussion, 10,000 cannot jump to conclusions. What the Empress Dowager said is very true, the late emperor's mourning period has not yet expired, the people in the court are so anxious, must want to rush in the mourning period after the new emperor's great sealing when the dust settles, pause for a moment, I said, in this case, Brother Lang may as well take the opportunity to select available people, strong arm. See Wen Lang seems to be puzzled, I follow to explain, the establishment of the queen is not more than trivial, all dynasties are involved in a major, the prime minister in power for 8 years, the foundation is also considered deep, the peace and prosperity, the emphasis on culture and light military is unavoidable, the previous election of the crown princess, the prime minister's chances of victory are quite large. But after a huge change, the general is embracing the merits of the status of the prime minister and the prime minister, or even slightly better, the prime minister which can be willing. So at this time, the battle for the throne, in fact, is the battle for the dynasty. Wen Lang was stunned and nodded slightly, not bad. I also said, March mourning period is only 20 days left, the big seal is just around the corner, the center of the dynasty is anxious to be certain, and always anxious to lose meticulous, inevitably broken. In recent years, most of the newly promoted officials on the court is a key member of the heart, leaving aside the talent not to say, alone loyalty alone will be difficult to reuse people, Brother Lang might as well take advantage of this time to choose the best talent, cultivate the heart of the arm, the prime minister and the general for the achievement of the great things, will do their best to go along with the brother's heart, less obstruction. Wen Lang listened and praised with a high five, this is exactly how it should be. You is really smart, I didn't see through this. I only said, Brother Lang is just busy with imperial affairs and the authorities are just confused. Wen Lang hesitated again, it's just that this empress will eventually be established, I know Wen Lang's mind, Ruirong is the queen in his heart, but it's just that it's never possible nowadays. Stand up and walk to the imperial case, I will be a bowl of tea is still warm to Wen Lang front, sent to his hands, Brother Lang, today's situation, the stability of the dynasty is the first thing to do, regardless of the establishment of Chen Yanyu or Ni Luning, will hold a large number of the forces of the dynasty. Brother Lang is a helping hand. When Lang frowned, two tigers fighting each other, wouldn't it be better to let them hold each other back? Yes, I nodded my head, but this move is extremely risky when the new emperor ascends to the throne, and mutual restraints will inevitably attack each other, resulting in internal friction, which is very unfavorable to stabilizing the people's and the army's hearts. Of course, if you want to maintain the balance, there is also a method, that is, both sides are not established. On Wen Lang's hopeful eyes, I almost cannot bear to hit him. Instead of establishing a third person, the candidate to determine then the two choice of one more careful and thorough, a little careless, it will be a mistake. It must be can be at the same time to control two high officials or daughters of the royal relatives who can hold the two great officials in check at the same time. When Lang bowed his head and pondered, among the high officials, there is only Cui Xiaofu, but he has always been a fearful one, and in his day-to-day life, he thinks that he will not take the risk, so he cannot be counted on. There is even no suitable person among the royal relatives. That's why this matter Brother Lang still needs to discuss carefully with the Empress Dowager. I paused and still said, but no matter what, it can't be Roy Rong. When Lang raised his eyes, his lips tightened, and finally shook his head. My heart softened, and I somewhat regretted that I had said such a thing, and at that moment I suddenly remembered the words of my second aunt. Brother Lang, you said a big disrespectful word. There won't be only one empress in any dynasty or generation, and Brother Lang doesn't have to be in a hurry. When Lang took my hand, when you are by my side and help me with advice, I am much more settled in my mind. He paused for a moment and then said, it's just that it's really aggravating to trap such an intelligent, considerate and understanding person like you in the palace. I froze at the words, then drew back my hand to get up. Kneeling in front of Wen Lang, he was surprised to pull me up, was gently pushed away by me, solemnly said, Brother Lang, in front of you is the Mu family's Yuer who grew up together. Yuer voluntarily went to the palace and got Brother Lang to take care of her. There is absolutely no aggression to speak of. I bowed my head as salute, changed the title, Emperor. In front of you is selected into the palace of Mu. The rules of the palace, without the seal of approval, shall not be AWOL from the Jinzi palace, shall not be alone to face the king. The rules of the ancestors, concubines need to be careful to speak and observe etiquette, shall not be unauthorized to enter the palace of Qingjing. The harem shall not interfere with the government. You are today all offenders, enough to die. The emperor is not pursued today, but please keep in mind, you child said that perhaps the emperor is willing to listen to one or two, but the harem shall not interfere in politics is the ancient reason. There is no doubt, in the future, if there are harem concubines interfere in discussing government, pillow delusion, the emperor cannot be gullible. Wen Lang stayed for a moment and steadily picked me up. I've taken note of what you said, don't worry. He smiled faintly, and quickly added, but you are not my harem, and not being allowed to discuss politics is those women's rules, not yours, and second brother would not be happy to see you bound by those rules in the deep palace. You will always be that smart and beautiful Yuer in my eyes, that talented Yuer, and Brother Lang also hopes that you can also change back to that shrewd and happy sister Yuer. Tears started to well up in my eyes and I almost cried out. When Lang had a pampered look in his eyes. Well, it's still the same crybaby Yuer too. I wiped my eyes and blushed a little. Discovery isn't that good, and I didn't come up with any ideas, it's all just nonsense. Nonsense? How can you talk nonsense about the government? That can be really a capital offense. When Lang feigned anger bored face, and then laughed. Have not come up with any ideas. Take the opportunity to promote the virtuous is a good plan. I will select the candidate tomorrow to issue an imperial decree to appoint, just to see the prime minister and their reaction. He mused, well, Song Haran is the most suitable person in front of him. With his talent he can completely take on more errands, but there is no one to bail him out. I thought about it briefly and said, Lord Song was made a 5th-ranked cultivator after his high school last year, and early this year he was rewarded by the late emperor to be promoted to a 4th-ranked reader, and then he became a member of the crown prince's staff. and his younger sister was appointed to brother Chuan's hand in marriage, and everyone said that he had an unlimited future, but no one dared to protect him, and it must be that someone at the top was pressing him down. At that time is still so, now, his situation will be even more embarrassing, if can be boldly enabled by brother Lang, I think it must be the best effort. When Lang nodded, but did not make a sound, straight pause for a moment, before saying, there is something to tell you, Song Haran that sister, tomorrow will also enter the palace. I didn't move and only said, that's a talented woman who is famous in the capital, congratulates brother Lang on getting another beautiful woman. When Lang really changed his face, it's not what you think. Hashtag Chapter 18 Prologue, 2, I smiled and said lightly, so what if it's either, she's a poor thing too. When Lang saw I was not different, eased the tone, she was appointed to marry, the wedding date is set, but fear that it is difficult to remarry, mother pity her, called her into the palace, but also for the second brother good afterlife, for the royal virtue. The Empress Dowager is kind, it is the blessing of the women in the harem, brother Lang, I tilted my head to look at him and smiled, brother Chuan went, I have to listen to his words to live well and take care of myself, and its people and things related to him can't escape, it always has to be faced on its own, brother Lang don't spoil me. When Lang stroked my head like he was treating a small child, you're even more heartbreaking in this way. I'm not that good, it's a lie to say I don't mind, I'm just slowly getting used to it, and besides I put away my sadness and my smile blossomed into a smile, as early as mid-afternoon the news spread all over the Jinche Palace, and brother Lang was a step too late to tattle. When Lang was a little surprised and frowned, mother summoned me to discuss this matter last night, and the secret decree sent at the stroke of the hour today was already passed out by mid-afternoon. I was not amused, this harem is full of secrets and no secrets at all. See when Lang a few annoyed, I busy relieve him, long brother do not have to worry about, is not a big deal, hide but also a day or two, those who receive the benefits of lackeys naturally happy to offer treasures, in the future, there are confidential matters to send credible people to do it in private. You are the biggest master under the sky, in charge of the rich and powerful life and death, the way the anger of the time will have to come up with the master of the money to the following people are smarted, no in and out of the. When Lang helpless reluctantly smiled, did not say anything, I know that his heart at this time must be complex, to be from a kind and idle fifth prince, into the emperor of the supreme heavenly authority, no matter how difficult it is. Looking at Wen Lang in front of me, I always have some hidden worries, but I can't help anything for a while. At this time, I heard Chang Yuan reminding in a low voice outside the door, Your Majesty, it's time for the hour, it's time to rest. Wen Lang stood up, called him in and ordered, You send Yuer back, today's events carefully do not spread out, if there is half a bit of news leakage, only you will be asked. Chang Yuan was startled and hurriedly answered. I looked at Wen Lang and only said, Your Majesty take care of your body and rest early, Yuer excuses herself. Words and salute out, I and other line of 3 people to take advantage of the night to return to the original way, ring bell waiting for me to dress and remove makeup, only to feel hungry, Jinzi Palace is not compared to home, at any time there is a meal ready, only to enter some snacks, then sleep. Early the next morning, there is news that Song Baining lived in the Jinsue Palace Moon House, the next few days she is closed, but also all rejected the guests, even if it is necessary to show up on the occasion. Song Baining is also far from the last stand, did not say a word, and stood in the crowd of ice-cold Ni Luning is the shape of the same thing, afar away from the hustle and bustle of the one in the middle of the quiet. Although I lamented her generation of talented women in such a situation, but also really do not have the temperament and mood to provoke her. Soon about the Queen's candidate will begin to spread the rumor, a time of diverse opinions, Chen Yanyu and Ni Luning in the focus of the rumors needless to say, Sun Ziqi and Yao Qian also be dragged into it. A few days, said the Ministry of Ceremony has prepared the establishment of the Queen of the ceremony of all matters, and there are more than the second grade have the opportunity to win the election of the said. All of a sudden the candidates reached nearly 10 people, the people's talk is quite abundant. During this period, in addition to studying the history of the palace anecdotes, is to stay with 3 or 5 sisters with similar habits in one place, playing a moderate to seal the small master, cut the chin, and talk, neither like the 2 icebergs as arrogant and aloof, nor as Wang Yiyao that overly enthusiastic. The month of January passed quickly, and the title was set for the 3rd day of the late emperor's mourning period, the 26th day of the 8th month. This day at the hour of the day, all the people are concentrated in the Jinshi Palace Hall, beautiful purple and red warbling a room of people. Qianyuan Palace Hall of the Big Seal has just ended. From time to time there are maids and eunuchs come in to report the news. The news quickly spread, in addition to the routine of the birth mothers of the Wenlang and Wenchuan, enthroned a number of princes as princes and counties, for a number of heir to the imperial consort 2 concubines to add. The seal, a number of young officials of the seal is quite striking. The various ministries of culture and the military the 3rd to 5th grade are placed between, while several high-ranking ministers only got some false names, or gold and silver and so on. There are a lot of people want to infer the queen candidate according to the previous dynasty, but did not find which important ministers alone won the grace, so that before the infinite speculation in the harem became confused, most of the people face show doubt, no one to open their mouths to talk about it again. Soon, see the chief of internal affairs and a few palace of the stewardship of the eunuch sisters and his entourage to the Jinshi Palace, with the Empress Dowager arrives, His Majesty arrives, of the newspaper sound, the people make way to kneel to welcome, called up after the rose and stood. The inner eunuch of the decree propped open the decree, and after the perennial opening enjoyment, a series of enthronements came one after the other. Being point to the person in turn near the front end kneeling to listen to the seal, did not expect, the seal is completely in accordance with the order of the grade of each person in the order, and no bias, and the highest only for the 5 concubines, not to mention the consort, and even none of the main position, out of all people's expectations. Chen Yenyu was given the title of Rong concubine and resided in Yongxiang Palace. Ni Lining was given the title of Jing concubine and resided in Changxing Palace. Chui Ziki was given the title of Lan Yangyuan and resided in Yuhua Palace. Feng Chunsheng was given the title of Yi noblewoman and resided in Guangming Palace. Yao Qianqin was given the title of Qing noblewoman and resided in Shihua Palace. Duan Zilin was given the title of Liang noblewoman and resided in Chenghui Palace. Song Baining was given the title of Han Beauty and resided in Jing'an Palace. Wang Yiyao was given the title of Ming Kairen and resided in Yanxiu Palace. Yuan Yen was given the title of Qi Changjing and resided in Qingfu Palace. I was also made a noblewoman and resided in Jinghe Palace, and my name was Yu. I was also made a noble person with the title of Yu, and resided in the Jinghe Palace. In addition to the 22 people, another 2 of the lowest rank from the 8th grade, must be these days the communication of the Lang side near the bed of the palace maid, is also considered to have a name. With the usual practice of 6 products above can have a different title, this time the 24 people have been sealed with a title, to show the new emperor's grace. The sealing is complete, another reward, all. Thank you in unison. At this time, when Lang Fang spoke, the collapse of the late emperor, the grief of the people, the country even 3 months of mourning, I ritual state, I should be the world's filial piety first, edge of my reign before there is no wedding, so the queen's position temporarily suspended, to be the late emperor after the anniversary of a separate title. I listened to the corner of my mouth slightly flooded with smiles, when Lang finally put off the establishment of the queen. The people in the temple did not have half a sound, under the calm, I think they must have their own thoughts. Next is the Empress Dowager admonished the harem, this harem has not yet established the queen, so your position are sealed not high, as long as you serve the emperor, more for the royal branch, who first got Jin master position, will be able to take care of the harem for the grieving family, the future of the empress of the position will not be biased in favor of anyone. Just you all weekdays when abide by the rules of this, don't let me hear what charm the monarch, the harem competition thing, that is fixed punishment not to spare. All the people are honorable voice answered, to the end, the Empress Dowager got up and said, send people back to the various palaces to take care of properly, assign servants, this day will be by Rome concubines to serve the bed. Chen Yanyu is not colorful, respectfully thanked. When Lang then helped the Empress Dowager to leave, the face cannot see the likes and dislikes, also did not look at her. When I returned to the plum courtyard, before I entered, I saw Xiao Mei and Xiao Yong waiting at the door with happy faces, and when I got closer, I could see their faces full of anticipation. Congratulations to your excellency you. I nodded. Behind the Ring Pei then pulled out the silver reward for 2 people, to the hall settled down to look again, only to see the small Yong cupped silver cannot help but be happy. Xiao Mei is not much joy, just calmly thanked the reward. I took the tea from Ringling's end and took a sip. Xiao Mei, I will be moving out of this Jinshi palace in another hour, so if you have anything to say, say it now. If you're late, you'll have to wait for the next draft. Xiao Mei fiercely looked at me, bit her lips hard, the whole person filled with disappointment and uneasiness, some struggle, until the eyes red mist a piece of water, also finally did not open his mouth. On the side of Xiao Yong but suddenly kneeled down. Slave served your little master only a month of light, clumsy and did not let the little master comfortable, do not dare to ask the little master to take the slave to go, but the slave boldly pleaded with the little master to stay. Xiao Mei, she dash, Xiao Yong look at Xiao Mei, finally came down hard, said, Xiao Mei's sister into the palace for 5 years, has been divided in the Jinzue palace. Few people live in the plum courtyard, if there is no master pick to go, next month will be released from the palace to go. I frowned lightly. Is it bad to leave the palace? Take advantage of your good age to find a good family to marry, so as not to delay your years in life. Xiao Yong became more and more anxious, tugging at Xiao Mei's sleeve. Sister Xiao Mei, you should say something. Say something. To no avail, I smiled casually. In that case, it will have to be just that. You guys go down. No matter how much Yong pulled her, Xiao Mei's distorted face remained as unmoved as a statue, except for the large teardrops that fell, and the suppression of unreleasable sadness that emanated from her body. I looked at the 2 of them expressionlessly, suddenly blaming myself for my indifference, feeling like I was bullying these 2 subordinates who had been trembling for years in the palace with their newly acquired status. I sighed. Xiao Mei, you're going with me but you won't tell your story, that's overkill. Pausing for a moment, I said, that's just it, I won't force you to say anything if you don't want to now. I'll just remind you that no matter if it's sadness or hatred that's in your heart, you mustn't show it freely in my palace from now on, otherwise it will bring you and me both endless troubles. Xiao Mei froze, her still tear-stained face displaying a look of surprise and suspicion. I smiled slightly and said to Huanpei, go and report to the House of Internal Affairs. I've taken Xiao Mei and Xiao Yong from the plum courtyard of the Jinshi Palace with me. Ring Pei answered the sound and went away. Xiao Yong understood and kowtowed in a hurry, so joyful that his voice changed tone. Many thanks, little lord. Thank you, little lord. I will do my best to serve little lord. Xiao Mei was even more speechless and just kowtowed along. With a turn of mind, I asked her, Xiao Mei, what's your real name? Xiao Mei was unsure of what to expect and returned, the slave girl's family name is Xia, and her name is Taoyun. Peach Cloud, that's an okay name. I nodded. I can take your person away, but I can't take that name away, so from now on, you'll still be called Peach Cloud. This was indeed a great favor, and Momoyan kowtowed with joy and gratitude. I waved my hand. Go on, pack up all your belongings, and we'll be on our way. Jinghe Palace is a medium-sized palace courtyard. The main hall of the left and right each have 2 into the courtyard. I was arranged into the main hall on the right side of the clouds. No, the court. Into the courtyard, by a few of them to pick up and clean. I leisurely look around. This may have to live on a long period of time. The outer courtyard stretch spacious, inner courtyard fresh and elegant. The scenery is also exquisite, just not very characteristic. Well, I do not have too much demand for these, later slowly trimmed to fit the mind can be. There was a stone archway on one side of the inner courtyard, and the lush forest could be seen faintly outside. My heart stirred, and I took a step through the archway and rounded a corner down a small wooded avenue, and the sight in front of me made me stare in disbelief. This is the back garden of the Jinghe Palace. from where I stand, the scenery in my home and the garden of the courtyard quite a few similarities, just in the way of the rules of the palace. The hill is very short and flat, above the pavilion is also very small. See this familiar scenery, my heart happy, quickly walked to the pavilion to sit down, slightly tilted his head, let the wind blowing face. It has been more than a month since I left the garden where I had lived for 6 years, and at the same time, I have left the time that was comfortable and happy, and the past that I remembered as if it were hemlock. Miss. So you're over here, telling the slave girl to look for you. Huan Pei sought me out. She looked around and was also surprised. Miss, this is very much like our garden. I smiled and nodded, all packed up at the front. Huan Pei has always done things steadily. Yes, after the meal time, Miss go to use some meals, in addition to the Ministry of Internal Affairs called for another person to lead a few courtesans to, said in accordance with the nobleman's share of cases, in addition to Peach Cloud and Xiao Yong, our courtyard can also choose another courtesan eunuchs each too. Miss can go to see. I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I just said, I'm not going, you go watch and pick, I'll stay over here for a while. Huan Pei answered, then slave girl call Huan Ling over. This backyard garden instantly brought me closer to this cold and serious palace, and also made me feel a little bit better about this Jinghe palace. Huan Ling was carrying a food box in one hand, looking around with excitement, and before she arrived, her voice had already traveled. Miss, it's just like going home here. The emperor is really treating you well. I didn't know how long I would stay in this Jinghe palace. I only understood that this place would be the prologue to my life as a harem concubine for the rest of my life, so I didn't say anything. I just warmly and brilliantly hooked a smile at the corner of my mouth, even though this smile was full of regrets. Hashtag Chapter 19, Secret Visit. Rome concubine. After the second day of bedtime promotion from the 4th grade Wan Yi, the next 2 days in turn is Jing concubine, Lan Lianyuan after bedtime promotion to Shun Yi in concubines. Early this morning, all the people still come to Renshou Palace to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager looked good spirit, deliberately left us to talk a little longer. Lan concubine's fast talking is very much like the Empress Dowager. All the people from time to time laugh again and again. Towards the end, the Empress Dowager said, tomorrow the mourning family and the Dowager concubines will go to the Tianning Temple to pay homage to the Buddha for 7 days, to mourn for the late emperor, and also to pray for the emperor and for the people. Hearing, Rong Wanyi, Jing Shunyi and Lan concubines are reported to go with the weight. The Empress Dowager smiled and waved her hand. Lan concubines to go is to disturb the quiet of the Buddha's temple. You do not have to follow, Wanyi the highest position. I'm not in the palace, you have to lead them to serve His Majesty. Everything follows the rules, who cannot be arbitrary. All the people are honorable voice answered. After the queen consort left the palace, in accordance with the order of the next is a number of nobleman position betting, when Lang but 3 days in a row did not call anyone, so that all the palace are not free from anxiety up. For the matter of bedtime, I do not look forward to talk about fear, but is the ring pay ring bell 2 girls distracted for several days, no asterisk heart nervous. September's weather is already cool, several days in addition to give the Empress Dowager to ask for peace, should promise to visit, I most of the time in the back garden of this Jinghe palace to spend. In the afternoon of this day, ring bells carrying the hem of the skirt hurriedly ran over. Miss Qian Yuan Palace side passed the decree, said that the emperor tonight summoned Miss It. I wasn't surprised to hear it, and I really didn't count it as joyful. I just paused and pursed the corners of my lips, then go get ready. Ringmaster opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't say anything and tugged Ringbell away. In addition to the concubines before bedtime routine service imperial sprinkler as well as bathing incense, dressing makeup, in addition to the first time to serve concubines also need to be prepared to receive the holy decree of the incense case bowing Ming oath. For this matter, once upon a time I had immense regrets of the evaluation, marrying into the royal seemingly glorious extreme hall, but to be alone to worship heaven and earth, alone a person into the cave, and how lonely and sad. I remember Wenchuan's arms warmly encircling me at that time, saying, when the time comes, I will definitely hold your hand and stay by your side. Evening meal time, respect room will have the eunuch over to declare the official decree. I declared the eunuch routine congratulations in the sound of the decree to receive the decree. A person calmly bowed his head in worship. When Lang is not aware of these, even if I know, he wants to hold hands with the woman, but also is not me. The day gradually darkened. I dressed sitting in the house, looking at the outside. They deliberately hung up the red lights. Suddenly doubt. No matter what kind of woman, in this kind of moment should be apprehensive and restless. Why I can be exceptionally calm as a bystander, is not as good as a few maids looking out over and over again. And with that, I couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth and flush with a faint self-deprecation. Coming. A voice came in from outside, and I stood up, letting the ringlet help me into a brocade cloak. The natural is not the emperor, but the Qianyuan palace to pick up the soft sedan chair. Ancestral rules, more than 3 main concubines are qualified to sleep in their respective palaces, and also depends on the degree of the emperor's favor. The previous dynasty relaxed to more than 5 and pregnant concubines occasionally exceptions, the rest of the need to Qianyuan palace, the 11th hour to the ugly time to return, cannot be accompanied by the driver all night long. I'm just a small 6th grade nobleman, since the exception is not. Autumn manna soft sedan chair to thin satin as a cover, the night breeze, satin fluctuating slightly fluttering, light as a dream. Soon, the soft sedan chair into the Qianyuan palace, parked outside the door of the manna palace. There are small inner supervisor to help me into the door of the palace, then bring the door back down. I looked around this unfamiliar hall, my eyes quickly focused on the figure in the inner hall. When Lang had also just turned around to look at me, eyes facing each other, I was suddenly a little frightened and at a loss, not knowing what to say or where to step. My humble servant sees your majesty. Froze for a while, I chose to kneel down to do my part. The words have just been exported, but the heart is a relief, although it is forced to hold back, but still raised his head, and then look at Wen Lang. His playful expression finally let me laugh out, that a little bit of trepidation disappeared without a trace. Me and Wen Lang, how can that be possible? However, easy just a moment, in front of me, after all, is to serve the identity of the palace consort to this gu named Ganlu Hall. The heart is inevitably lonesome and overwhelmed again prevailed. After a while, when Lang tilted his head to look at me, I say, little Ewer, how long are you going to kneel there? That floor seems to be hard. I sighed and stood up to walk over, my tone deliberately mournful. Your Majesty didn't call up, how would I dare to make a move? Wen Lang just laughed and sized me up. Ewer is dressed very daintily today. I laughed. Your Majesty should change the word, Ewer can't afford it. Oh, Wen Lang suddenly put away his smiling face and only said, then it's not early in the day, and the nobleman is still not broadclothed with me. I froze and blinked, then begged for mercy. Brother Lang, Ewer knows she's wrong. Only then did Wen Lang lighten his face and unfolded his smile. Does Ewer like this title? I nodded gently. The character Yu is very good and has the same sound. Thank you, Brother Lang. Wen Lang gestured me to the inner hall of the couch. Sat down. I just saw sitting on the couch of the low table spread 5 or 6 folders. Wen Lang patted these folders with his hand and said, some days ago I deliberately find a reason to ask about the beginning of the year when the case of the Jiangnan tribute, explicitly called once intervened in the Ministry of the Household, Ministry of Mandarins, Ministry of Criminal Justice and the current Jiangnan weavers to hand over a comment on each, secretly called the Songhao Ran to keep an eye on the various parties' dynamic. Visit. I raised an eyebrow. The case of Rui Rong's family. Seeing that Brother Lang is like a spring breeze, I think he must have a clue. Wen Lang laughed, more than a clue. I had heard that this matter involves the key members of the dynasty. I thought that if you want to find out we'll have to take a lot of trouble. I did not think that it was so smooth. That the Ministry of Mandarins and the Ministry of Criminal Affairs of the Passport cannot see what, the Ministry of the Household Secretary Li Jin's folders in the ambiguous that the case is still doubtful, and that the Jiangnan system of weaving Kong Xiangli even in the passport that Shi Zhejiang is because of the straightforward nature, unwilling to work with corrupt officials in the dynasty, enriching their own pockets. and then framed for the crime, and asked the imperial court to investigate thoroughly. When Lang said, picking out a folding hand me, I looked at it carefully, frowned. This Kong Xiangli for this case seems to know a lot, but the rhetoric is just surface work, at first glance seems to be impassioned righteousness, in fact, neither the art of telling the satiation, but also did not say the source of the corrupt officials. When Lang gently high-fived and nodded, exactly. What do you think his intentions are with this? I bowed my head and thought for a moment. The Zhang folders are written in a straightforward and blatant manner, but the key points are hidden. If there is not a difficult to say, it is to leave a way back for themselves. When Lang couldn't help nodding, you child really good mind, Song Haran brought back the news is exactly this, the original this corrupt official and will focus on Kong Xiangli, want to continue to reap some benefits, but this Kong Xiangli see this corrupt official backstage as unstable situation, but afraid to be unloaded kill donkey, so it will let go of the fight, implicitly played on a book. Hearing this, I suddenly asked, is this officer? Ministry of Rights Secretary Lu Yuzhang, your wife's father, when Lang sighed, slightly shaking his head, father must know, just in the way of your wife did not pursue, do not want to this Lu Shangshu but do not want to converge, more and more aggravated up. I followed up with a worried, so what is brother Ron going to do? Seeing Wen Lang pondering, I tried to say, I'm afraid this is not the time to pursue the matter openly, so we can only take our time. It's good that we can use this opportunity to overturn the case for the Shi family. Wen Lang nodded his head somewhat helplessly, that's fine, tomorrow I'll take advantage of Kong Xiangli's Xingbiao to vindicate Shi Zhijiang, and that Lu Yuzhang, just let him be for a few more days. I suddenly missed Rui Rong, I wonder how she has been doing this month or so, Rui Rong must be very happy to know about this. Speaking of Rui Rong, Wen Lang's eyes contain endless tenderness, and that warm smile is like Wen Chuan, which makes me so fascinated that I can't mistake my eyes. A few moments later, I finally managed to lower my head and wordlessly organize the zhengji on the table. Wen Lang didn't notice my abnormality, but just spoke out of turn, how about tomorrow night we sneak out of the palace to see Rui Rong? Chapter 20, Secret Visit, 2, I knew I should have stopped Wen Lang, it was too bad that word of such a thing had got out, but I gave up that reasoning in a mere flash of thought, and nodded with joy and anticipation, infected by Wen Lang. With Wen Lang detailed planning up the matters out of the palace, only to find that I was placed in the Jinghe Palace is Wen Lang's special arrangement, that Jinghe Palace main gate is quite close to the Qianyuan Palace, the back door is a relatively quiet road leading straight to the entrance and exit of the inner palace of the Fanghuimen, is really a very good transit station for the action. Seeing that the hour had reached the Z hour, I said, it is time to go back, Brother Lang has worked hard all day, take an early rest. Vin Lang looked outside and nodded, his eyes following towards the bed. I followed his gaze for just a second and blushed instantly. There was a white brocade handkerchief spread right in the middle of that bed, and naturally I knew what it was for. Take a deep breath, I walked to the bedside, this fake is non-doable, or else spread out this harem or going to chicken fly dog, just to the front of the problem, in order to prevent injuries to the king, concubine's bedtime with no sharp objects, even hairpin or rounded and smooth blunt, but where to take a little bit of blood from it. When Lang stroked my shoulder behind me, it's okay, tell them to do it. Then he shouted, Chang Yuan. A few quick footsteps outside and a clear, minion is here. I hurriedly tugged at Wen Lang, shook my head, and softly said, this kind of head-scratching matter, it's better for fewer people to know about it, and in the future, if it's really exposed, there's no need to lose the lives of the lackeys for nothing. Wen Lang looked at me, did not make a sound, I also do not say more, back to sit beside the couch, will be on the table of the tea bowl lid grabbed in the hand, make on the strength of the grip, force in the wooden couch armrests and knock. My grip tightened in my hand, and with a muffled, not so big sound, the lid of the bowl shattered in my hand. Hastily loosened the force, but did not think that this hit the big brother. That seems to be a small trick in the force mastery is skillful, half knowledge of me or cut the palm, blood slowly flowed out. Biting his lip and frowning gently, it was good to be on the same path. Turning around, my gaze just happened to meet Wen Lang, who rushed over in a few steps. I deliberately ignored the reproach and heartache in his eyes, spreading out my palms for him to see, and smiled. It's really a poorly learnt skill. Wen Lang frowned and took the brocade handkerchief, helping me to dab the blood on my hands, and then delicately wiping the blood off the shards of the bowl lid. Your Majesty. Seeing that there was no movement inside, Chang Yuan carefully waited outside. Wen Lang opened his mouth and commanded, "It's time to return, tell the outside to get ready." Chang Yuan answered, and there was soon movement outside. At this time Wen Lang lifted his hand and detached my hair bun. I was stunned, then I realized, he saw me red through a face. He was angry and amused. He whispered, you are always so strong that it makes people's heart ache. Remember to go back to put on some medication. If this goes on, second brother will surely blame me for not taking good care of you." I lowered my head and didn't say anything. Wen Lang sighed softly and raised his voice, "Go on." Chang Yuan pushed the door in. I knelt in peace. A palace maid to help me to the outer hall simply pulled the hair. I covered the cloak, was about to leave, heard Wen Lang's voice, "Tomorrow morning pass the decree, you nobility promoted to you concubine." I returned to go in to thank the grace. Wen Lang did not say anything more, just told me to go back to rest, tomorrow to see me again. I saw that the brocade handkerchief and broken bowl cover are Chang Yuan personally received to go. The heart is also at ease. Back to Jinghe Palace, several palace maids and inner supervisors were waiting at the door. Their mouths were full of congratulations. After welcoming me in, I ordered everyone to disperse, leaving only Huan Pei and Huan Ling to serve me in purifying my body. When no one else was around, I opened my right hand, which I had been half-clasping, and gave it to Ring Pei. I hurt my hand. Huan Pei's eyes widened at once. How did this happen? I just looked resigned. It kind of hurts. Seeing me like this, Huan Pei was helpless and had to go with Ringling to fetch water to wash me, and then took the wound medicine and applied it with me, gently blowing on it. I will go through the process with the two of them, instructing them to keep it a secret. Ring Bell pounding garlic like nodding their heads. Ring Pei is a face of gravity. Miss can be really bold. Don't forget that there is still a guardian sand on your shoulder. It seems that this close to the body is not allowed to have other people to get their hands on it. The Ring Bell listened to pick up. How about some more insurance, Miss? After each bath after the slave girl will be that palace sand around the tracing into the flour tin, so that even if inadvertently looked at, will not be suspicious. It was past midnight, and I felt sleepy, so I nodded my head in agreement when I heard what they said, and then went to bed with my clothes wide open. At that time, there will be promoted to the decree arrived. The ancestral rule is that the harem is the third-grade concubines above the name of the queen, is the fifth-grade concubines above the master, the rest are small masters. The first time to serve in the bed as a rule are promoted to the first level. Before the three high-ranking officials of the daughter have not made an exception, but I crossed a level directly promoted to concubines, and immediately became the focus of the crowd, to congratulate the endless stream of people. There is no master in the harem, and the Empress Dowager is not in the palace, so I don't have to go to ask for peace and listen to the training, but there are sisters who come to congratulate me, but I can't refuse. Weekday acquaintance Lan concubine, Yi Guiren, Chi Changzai. Needless to say, between the sisters happy to talk for a while. Just send them away, and ushered in a number of little to do with and have not yet served the bed. Vain compliments mixed with envy, sidetracking to inquire about the emperor's preferences. My first promotion, since I cannot stay a lonely and arrogant posture, only have to be gentle and virtuous. False response, straight tossed most of the daytime. To this Jinghe Palace finally quiet down, is already Shan time. Two maids serve meals. I listened to the Ring Bell rambling about the increase and change of the dishes, hastily into some meals, then leaned on the couch to rest, to raise the spirit, thinking that this night must be all night not sleep. The 11th hour is just over, when Lang will take the sedan carriage with great fanfare to the Jinghe Palace. I led a group of palace maids eunuchs to do a full look like a favored palace consort, ceremonial style to receive the driving, welcomed the Wen Lang into the Yun Ziyuan inner courtyard. In addition to the Ring Pei Ring bells and Changyuan, ordered the other palace maids. Eunuchs are waiting outside. No one is allowed to enter the house without authorization. To the house, I changed into my regular clothes with Wen Lang, and carefully instructed Chang Yuan and the two maids to be careful to stay on guard, and then without delay, went out of the Jinghe palace through the back door. The moon is like water, the night of the palace is very quiet. I too specialized in picking the dark and secluded paths, left and right, carefully avoided a number of sets of night patrols of the inner guards. Wen Lang softly laughed. Do you see that we are now like in the past to sneak out to play? It's been a long time since we've had that kind of leisure. After a moment's pause, he added, only when the whole world is in the hands, instead of giving birth to many fetters, it would be better to go away as soon as possible since then. I held my tongue. I don't see it like that, but rather like, if you were to be replaced by Rui Rong, and take the beauty and abandon the river and mountain, then it would truly be an elopement. Wen Lang smiled aloud at his words, causing me to be so shocked that I rushed to use my hand to cover his mouth, listen to nothing moving, only to let go of the heart, angrily look at him. Wen Lang still looks like an idle look. The patrols of the night have passed, to be circled back to this side of the time at least a moment more. I really feel like it at this time, in the past days to go out to play, every time this kind of scouting thing is Wen Lang to go, he is quite good at this. Continuing on my way, I soon reached the wall of the inner palace. I suddenly felt uneasy and tugged at Wen Lang's sleeve. Brother Lang, nowadays is not like the past. Is it not too hasty for you to go out of the palace alone like this with the status of the 9 and 5? Wen Lang patted my hand. You are really is a heart of life. I'm reckless again, will not really go out of the palace alone. There is always someone to take care of, not to mention also with you. Do you still remember your little flowery fist? Wen Lang smiled and reached out to point at the dark red palace wall. Can you leap over it? Hashtag Chapter 21, Secret Visit, 3, I didn't even lift my head and scrunched my face. Brother Lang just make fun of you. Although this inner palace wall is much shorter than the outer city wall, it is also more than 2 feet, I absolutely no way to leap over. Wen Lang clearly sought my happiness, shook his head with a smile, and reached out to point remotely. Alas, then we will have to labor master you to go around through the Manhwa gate. I smiled leisurely. This is very good, the moon is delicate, my concubine just happens to accompany His Majesty to enjoy the moon and take a walk, so pleasant. Wen Lang just looked at me, but smiled and did not say anything. His eyes flickered and seemed to wander. I was embarrassed by his look, turned around, look around no one, lifting the breath to move forward. I know Wen Lang's hands are quite good, and do not dare to look back. Sure enough, not out of 3 steps will hear the sound of close kind behind the approaching, only to make every effort to barely forward, can pass more than 20 feet, the breath cannot keep up, found Wen Lang is already sticking to the side of the body, and then simply stop, even breathing, and Wen Lang slowly forward, listening to him say, you child, this escape kung fu is really good. I was dumbfounded. Brother Lang's words are not new, my brother at home makes fun of you in this way. The Manhwa gate is right in front, looking from afar, the door is open, outside the door parked a carriage, next to the standing 2 people, I think it is the manpower arranged by Wen Lang. I closed my voice, back to Wen Lang behind. Walking closer, those 2 people welcome over, the back is a small inner eunuch, the front one looks like a guard, see him lowered his voice, see the emperor. My identity as a concubine of the harem, Manhwa gate is already the limit of what I can get involved in. Since Wen Lang did not make it clear, I am also happy to be greeted by no one, only pretending to help Wen Lang get on the car, and then also drilled into it. Afterglow swept over the guard, felt that this person has some familiar face, the heart of the turn of mind, but did not have a detailed look, to sit around just after the curtain to lift up to see. The small eunuchs have already led the horse forward, the guards with the line on the side, shaking even more to see not carefully, had to give up. The outer palace is not cleaner than the inner palace. This is the outermost line of defense of the imperial city. Into the night, the inspection is more and more closely. Through the curtain, you can vaguely see a moment there will be a team of footsteps passing by. Wen Lang asked from behind him, did you just say you have a brother at home? I nodded. Yeah, my 3 brothers at home, they treat me extremely well. At this point in the conversation, I suddenly realized that the guards outside the car were not, off the cuff, isn't Rui Rong's brother outside? Sure, Rui Yao I have seen, but at the time of meeting is when I was in a panic. His appearance is not firmly remembered, not to mention that can be in the night in and out of the palace only the forbidden guards, so I did not think for a moment. When Lang nodded, he has been made a sub-lieutenant, and your second brother has been made as a leader. I was delighted. Second brother is promoted to the official position. The dimness cannot see the expression of Wen Lang, just about to open his mouth, but I saw him looking towards the car outside, signaling me to be silent. I knew that I had arrived at the Shihua gate, and there were voices of inquiry outside, only to hear Shi Ruiyao faintly say, an official duty commanded by the emperor. Then he thought that he had pulled out a token of weight, and the guards quickly released him without another word. The carriage went out of the city gates and traveled a little further, turned the corner and stopped. A few hoof beats were heard, and outside was another lowered voice. See you, your majesty, the humble minister is here by decree to wait for the emperor. I heard the voice really well, and it was actually my second brother, Guanchuan. I instantly leapt up and looked at Wen Lang expectantly, who smiled and gestured for me to go forward and respond. I busily lifted the curtain and called out in a low voice, second brother. Second brother was shocked and froze with his mouth open, but it was that Shi Ruiyao who reacted and lowered his head. It's concubine master you. I smiled at him. It's been a long time, Lieutenant Stone. I see you concubine. Urge's voice was tinged with joy, but he did not forget his duty. This is not the place to talk. May I ask where His Majesty is heading? We shall go forward as soon as possible. It turned out that when Lang did not specify where to go, I smiled and faintly spat out 2 words, go home. Second brother froze for a moment, first puzzled, and then seemed to understand, immediately nodded, and without asking more questions, gave one of the 2 horses held in his hand to Shi Ruiyao. The 2 of them got on the horse, and I also retracted my body to sit back in the car. The streets of the capital late at night are very silent. The sound of the horses' hooves and axles are exceptionally clear. The 2 of them guarded the carriage with one on the left and one on the right, hoofing it towards my house without stopping. I looked at the moonlight in the sky from the gap in the curtain and smiled. This is really a beautiful night. Not long after, the carriage stopped in front of my house. I was not in a hurry to move. I only told my second brother to go and call the door, and only when I saw Uncle Yuan open the door and come out did I get out of the carriage. Uncle Yuan was shocked to see me. His eyes widened. Miss. Alas. It's really Miss. How did you? Uncle Yuan, my flat and solemn voice managed to silence him. Straightening up at a bit of a loss for words, I whispered, send away all the underlings on night duty, and tell father and mother to come to the main hall, saying that it is I who have returned, and not to alarm the ants. Also have Auntie Chin go and call Ruirong. Yuan Bo one by one should be jogging in. I turned back to see when Lang has been out of the car. The second brother instructed the small inner supervisor to catch the car side waiting. Introducing Wen Lang into the main hall, I personally served him tea. My parents rushed over. Before anyone entered the house, I heard my father's voice, "You are back. What's going on here?" Before the words fell, he had already seen Wen Lang sitting in the room, and he hurriedly kneeled down. I see the emperor, concubine master you. I didn't know that His Majesty had come and hadn't come out to greet him. It's really a sin. Nyang was also busy following and kneeling aside. I saw a little aggravation. My eyes are piled up with tears. Look at Wen Lang. Did not make a sound. Wen Lang spoke gently. Lord Mu doesn't need to be polite. I am traveling in private. I got Wen Lang's eyes instructions, hurriedly went forward to help up the parents, and then worshipped the family rituals. Mother red-eyed stroked my hand. A few want to shed tears, but just forced to hold back. Lord Mu, what do you think of Shi Zhijiang's case? Wen Lang's sentence caused me to look back to see, father for many years for the official, since I know the proportion, said, after the promotion of Lord Song, the Hanlin Academy cultivator is not yet available. Sure adults want to be when the next year, the Ministry of Ceremonies will have a master of the shortfall. Although the answer is wrong, but when Lang intention was originally here, I cannot help but admire the wisdom of my father. At this time I saw Auntie Chin showing her head outside the door and then retreating back. I understood in my heart and signaled to mother to wait for a moment and stepped out. Rui Rong was indeed already in the corridor, very happy to see me, sister. I smiled. I hadn't seen her for over a month, and seeing that Rui Rong was still looking good, I felt much more at ease in my heart. Rui Rong, your brother also came over, see? Looking around, he didn't see Shi Ruiyao. He's gone on his rounds, I think. Ruirong glanced behind me and asked, "Is he coming over?" I looked at Ruirong and nodded with a smile. She didn't know how to address Wen Lang after all. Come on, go inside. Led Ruirong into the main hall. Wen Lang is with father to discuss something. Looked up to see, the mouth immediately stopped voice. I see the situation busy, called parents to retire out, bring the door. I picked up the side of the room to talk with my parents, so I cannot help but ask each other in detail, look at each other with tears, and I do not mention, and then my father mentioned that the third brother will soon be to the Forbidden Army as an officer. It should be in the jurisdiction of Shi Ruiyao. Although the errand is good, it's just a pity that there are no more civil ministers in the Mu family's generation. Father's words contained regret. I consoled, it's good that third brother has an errand, and what's the difference between a civil minister and a military general? They're all working for the court. Looking at mother, I added, besides, this Forbidden Army is based in the capital, at the foot of the Sun of Heaven, safe and scenic, so as not to be like second brother. Every time he goes on an expedition mother has to worry about it. Mother from the concurring said yes. Father in fact did not mind too much. To see the situation is also a loving smile. Well, can be closer to the you child, or from time to pass some news to the family. When it was past midnight, Auntie Chin came over to me. Miss, the second young master said it's almost time. I stood up and reluctantly paid my respects to my parents and went outside the main hall, and saw that only Shi Ruiyao was guarding the door. He gave me a discreet salute. It's time to return, and Mu's leader has gone outside to check the carriage. I nodded. I heard that my third brother will be transferred to the Forbidden Army as an officer this month, so I'll ask Vice Lieutenant Shi to take care of me in the future. Shi Ruiyao gave another salute. What did concubine you say? The Mu family has taken good care of Ruirong. My humble servant is too thankful for that, and there is no way that I wouldn't be able to bring my brother Guanming along with me. I looked at him, smiled lightly and said, I have no sisters since I was young. After seeing Ruirong very much like a family, no distinction. You are Ruirong's elder brother, is also my brother in general, so to me, you cannot be more cautious than so polite. No matter what, I will stand on Ruirong's side. The Shi family will soon be able to turn over a new leaf. You should plan more for Ruirong in everything outside. Her future path will not be easy. Shi Ruiyao seemed to be very surprised that I said this, looked at me blankly for a moment, hung his head, and said softly and firmly, it's me who's shallow. I'll take note of your words. At this time, second brother came over. The carriage is ready. It's already past the cinnabar hour. We can't delay any longer. I nodded, looked at the door to the house, and sighed. It looked like I was the only one who was going to have to go in and stick it to them. When I entered the house, I saw Wen Lang and Ruirong sitting side by side on the couch in the side hall, and when Lang was rambling on about something, I didn't go up to him. I just raised my voice, Brother Lang, we should go back. Wen Lang raised his head, nodded towards me, stood up, and carefully instructed Ruirong several times. Ruirong's red eyes helped Wen Lang with her cloak, no longer able to speak, just nodding frequently. I went forward, stroking Ruirong's back. Ruirong will be good to live in this side, left. Just a few months' time, the spring election will be able to enter the palace. By then can also solve my loneliness. I paused for a moment and added, as for this period of time, I will help you watch over Brother Lang in the palace, and make sure that no one else snatches him. At these words, Ruirong and Wen Lang both brought a smile to their faces. I took advantage of the situation, and when Lang will leave the Mu house on the carriage and return, parents from the door to send off, this is all smooth. Unexpectedly the carriage gradually close to the Xihua gate suddenly stopped. Shi Ruiyao in a low voice outside the report, Your Majesty, the Xihua gate there is a large contingent of honor guards. Hashtag Chapter 22, Hard to Defend. I and Wen Lang are all shocked, busy lifting the curtain to see. Xihua gate is never the ceremonial entry and exit of the palace gate, and it is this hour, unless it's the Empress Dowager. Wen Lang locked his brows after just one look. I was also a little anxious. The Empress Dowager came back at this hour and chose Xihua gate instead of Shenwu gate. Could something have happened? Wen Lang nodded. Something must be wrong. We can't get in at this point. It will take at least half an hour for this ceremonial procession to finish, and I'm afraid it's going to be dawn. I looked at the long queue and lost my mind. Although the Empress Dowager's Phoenix carriage had already gone in, there were still a lot of attendants and guards and items at the back, and both second brother and Shi Ruiyao's ranks were not high enough for anyone to stop the Empress Dowager's ceremonial carriage from letting us go in first. There was no other choice but to move the wagon to a relatively secluded corner and wait in place. When the palace gate was finally quiet, the sky was already slightly light. The carriage hurried into the palace gate, and again stopped outside the Fanghua gate. Second brother and Shi Ruiyao could only send to this point, and retired. It is already dawning. The palace in the early morning sweeping of the eunuchs and courtesans has been up. The action is greatly inconvenient, but I and Wen Lang has not cared about this much, and then a moment is the hour of the morning court, really cannot be delayed. Wen Lang is also anxious, pulling my left around and leap. Forgive him for this harem road orientation is very familiar with the footwork is also good. The two of us finally returned to the Jinghe Palace without any danger. As soon as I entered the back door of Jinghe Palace, I saw an anxious Changyuan waiting in the garden in extreme anxiety. Egu Emperor, you are finally back, but anxious slave. Huan Pei also panicked and came over towards me. What has happened to let the Queen Mother's regalia get in the way? Wen Lang's feet did not stop, hurried to the inner courtyard, a series of questions in his mouth. Isn't the Empress Dowager still a few days' work to come back? Why did she return today? Why did she go to Xihua gate? Standing far a trot followed in the back. Your Majesty, you do not know, last night you just left, came to Zhaoqing small county king had an acute illness of the letter, the stewardship of the sister endowed Roan Wani masters dare not make the decision. Sent over to find His Majesty. I can only say that His Majesty has slept. Later on the night called the doctor, but somehow the Empress Dowager got the message. Overnight from the Tianning Temple back, time to the Renshou Palace has just sent people over to ask the Emperor. I dare to return to say that the Emperor first to go to the court, after the court went to see the small county king. Your Majesty, if you come back a moment later, the head of the slave cannot be guaranteed. I was shocked to hear that Jifan was sick. This is a major event that has dragged on all night, so I don't know what's going to happen. But there is no time for me to think carefully in front of me. The most important thing is to get through the immediate. Pulling the ring, Pei hurriedly commanded, quickly go to wait for the Emperor to change clothes, told the outside of the sedan carriage is ready, the Emperor will go to the court. With his hands busy, he finally managed to send Wen Lang to the imperial carriage in time, and knelt at the entrance of Jinghe Palace to see him off. Only then did I let out a long breath and said to Huan Pei who helped me up, instruct our people in the palace to act with extra caution and never talk nonsense. I'm afraid this time it's a big trouble. Huan Pei is also worried, but also relieved. Miss is already a concubine of the 5th grade, stay overnight the Emperor although not the rules, but there are precedents, even if the chastisement will not be very serious it. I shook my head and didn't make a sound. I returned to the house, calling Ringling to help me comb my hair, and just after removing last night's bun, I saw Peach Cloud come in to report, Master. Renshou Palace has sent a decree to dispense with the invocation of peace this day. I waved my hand and told her to go down. Huan Pei then said, in that case, Miss sleep and rest. You're tired after staying up all night. I nodded, so I told them both to go rest as well. This sleep is very unsettled, the heart of some thoughts, always toss and turn, but 2 hours, to be ring pay end meal in will also get up. Rinshou Palace or Qianyuan Palace are not much news, my heart is always vaguely uneasy, terrified not to be resolved, until the evening meal time has been said that the condition of the little king of county has improved, my heart only a little bit more stable. The sky is a bit gloomy, earlier than usual dark, a day and night without sleep, at this time the body finally feels sleepy, no this kind of day when Lang will not call me, then ready to go to bed early, was about to change clothes to remove makeup, Wanpei suddenly ran in, Miss, Rinshou Palace of the Sun's sister came over, said that the Empress Dowager summoned Miss to go over to catch up on the conversation. She paused and looked grave, it says that the young lady was told to go alone. My heart sank, but suddenly I was relieved, what should come can never be avoided, where is Sister Sun? Ringling looked at me fearfully, waiting outside. I nodded my head and stood up to take a step, the two maids made a gesture to stop me, Miss. This. I smiled helplessly, that's the Empress Dowager, not the next who, still can't eat me up. Don't worry, I'll deal with it carefully, go and return. When I came outside, Sister Sun bowed to me, Master you concubine. Sister Sun quickly stopped being polite, I wonder what the Empress Dowager's important business is in summoning my concubine at this late hour. This slave girl is also not clear, concubine master you will know when she goes with her slave girl. Seeing this, I didn't ask any more questions and followed Sister Sun to the Rinshou Palace, where she guided me outside the Buddha Hall, please wait here for a moment, master you concubine.